What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. Naruto saved by Kami. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Most people of the world like to think of our actions as black and white, evil and good, but then why is it that everything humans do to each other is covered in dark gray? When we think of demons, we think of mindless killers who love to see people suffering, but there is one question that humans have failed to stop and ask themselves. What has a demon done that a human hasn't? Nothing. As a usual night in Konoha, a 8-year-old blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid was running down the alleyways. To most people they wouldn't think much of it, but to the people of Konoha, they just smirked because they knew what was going to happen to their little demon. The little blonde known as Naruto Uzumaki had been running for an hour or two at least. Yet no matter how far he got, these stupid people would always be behind him, calling for his blood. Why? Why do they always do this to me? The blonde thought while tears were running down his face. After 20 more minutes, his legs eventually gave out in one of Konoha's training grounds. It didn't take long for him to be surrounded by the mob of villagers. So the demon has finally given up and accepted its fate? Said a voice strangely familiar to Naruto, who turned his head to see Mizuki, his new academy teacher, seeing as he had only just started at the academy today. "Say sensei?" he said in labored and frightened breaths as to what was going to happen to him. "I'm not even going to waste my words on a filthy demon fox like you, so who don't you do us all a favor and just die?" said Mizuki with a sadistic grin on his face as he charged at Naruto with a Fuma shuriken. The other villagers were just cheering about finally killing the demon brat and getting revenge for their loved ones. Suddenly, a silver-haired Anbu stood between Naruto and Mizuki with what appeared to be lightning surrounding his right hand going directly towards Mizuki's chest. But something was off. Mizuki was still grinning. If anyone could see the Anbu's face, they'd see the shock and horror in his eyes. Mizuki, that cowardly sniveling bitch, used a substitution jutsu to get out of harm's way. But that was not what shocked the Anbu. Because right in front of him was little Naruto Uzumaki. Kakashi could only watch in horror as his Sharingan eye imprinted the memory of him killing his sensei's only son in slow motion. The boy, who was always smiling and getting back up with an even bigger grin after every time the villagers tried to put him down in the dirt. But now, all he could see was a frightened little boy coughing up blood with an arm through his chest, or to be more specific, his heart. Kakashi watched in despair as the brightness in the boy's eyes slowly began to dim until they were lifeless. Just about when everyone was going to cheer at killer intent that could match the Kyuubi no Yokos washed over them. At the entrance of the training grounds was the Hokage and 12 Anbu guards. "Anbu, kill everyone here but Kakashi and Mizuki. I'll deal with him myself," Sarutobi Hiruzen shouted with a murderous look in his eyes. After all the screams and people running pleading for forgiveness was done and all the bodies collected, the Hokage and Anbu left the scene soon after. In the middle of the training grounds, there could be seen a little boy in the fetal position whimpering with a small chain attached to his chest. He cried out to the Hokage as loud as he could, but his words seemed to never reach the Hokage's ears. He knew he was dead from seeing his own body, but Naruto just couldn't accept it that fast and easily. One thing came to mind though: if he was dead, then why was there no other ghosts of the people who were just recently killed by the Anbu? I bet Kami wants me to suffer alone in death as well as life. Naruto sniffled. As his despair and sadness began to grow, something began to change within him. All of his emotions began to come forth, broken from the mask he'd spent 8 years building as the harsh reality finally set in. He wanted to scream, to yell out and curse Kami herself for his suffering, but he didn't. Blaming others was not gonna change his situation now. I'm alone again. Those words unlocked everything in his heart, every bad and painful emotion he ever felt in his life. At that very second, the chain on his chest disintegrated in seconds. As Naruto fell to the floor in extreme pain, he couldn't help but think how things would have been if he had a second chance in life and screamed until he finally lost consciousness. It would be this day that anyone in the elemental countries would never see Naruto Uzumaki ever again. Where am I?" said Naruto, waking up, looking around in every direction, only to find gray sandy desert. After realizing he had no idea where he was, he tried to get up only to fall back down. What the hell? Looking down, Seeing his hands and feet had become paws. His skin was covered in yellow fur, with a fluffy tail between his back legs, long pointy ears, a hole in the center of his chest, and the thing he had most definitely noticed was now half a meter tall. Now most people, if they were in Naruto's position, would panic for hours wondering what had just happened to them, but not Naruto, right? Why the hell am I a midget? Naruto cried with anime tears running down his mask. Seeing as though there was nothing else to do, he decided he'd explore this place. Just as Naruto was about to move, sand beneath him started forming into a whirlpool. No matter what he did or how hard he struggled, he was not going to escape. Damn it, Kami really does hate me. First I get killed, then I end up in a lifeless gray desert, and finally, I get sucked in some sort of whirlpool, finding himself to be in sort of underground cave, with what looked like pillars reaching from the ground to the ceiling. What's next? I get chased by a load of monsters trying to eat me, said Naruto, frustrated beyond belief. But then Naruto felt a presence, not just one but many others. He looked around and surely he was right. He saw upon dozens of these big creatures with masks like him. Me and my big mouth, exclaimed a whimpering Naruto while mentally cursing Kami's name in every possible way. When he saw them all starting to come close to him, he saw they looked hungry, and then he started to feel hungry. Just looking at them made him drool, but then he stopped. The horrible names his old village used: monster, demon and abomination. Still probably cheering about my death, the bastards, Naruto thought. I won't give in to what they want. Even though I'm dead, I'll prove that their words are bullshit and won't degrade myself to their level. I'm not a monsterrr. With that thought in mind, Naruto stood his ground, confidence showing in his eyes. He was tired of running and being scared. The only way to become stronger was to fight and survive in any world. Well, would you look at this, boys? It looks like this small fry is gonna fight us, said a bird-type hollow, laughing while the others joined him. If I'm just small fry, then why is it that there are dozens of you to fight me unless the rest of are really weak? Naruto grinned, but on the inside he was a bit nervous. This did seem to piss them off because without warning, all the hollows in the area attacked him. As Naruto weaved and dodged his opponent's attacks, some of them being mere inches away, he suddenly felt an energy growing inside of himself. For people who don't understand, it's because when the soul is in danger of being destroyed, the spiritual energy increase. Straight from the mouth of Urahara Kazuki. When Naruto tried to move this energy to his claws and legs, he found his claw sharper, his legs faster and stronger. If possible, Naruto's grin became even larger. 30 minutes later, in the middle of all the dead hollows, there was one sole survivor, his yellow fur covered in the blood of these monsters. There were some of the hollows that ran away from the futile battle, but Naruto didn't care. He honestly couldn't blame them because, like them, he too knew the hunger for souls was mouth-watering. It was only his strong will that kept him from doing so. When Naruto looked down, he saw the river of blood he had created. It was then he finally saw his own mask. The overall shape was of a grinning fox, with 3 5-inch spikes on each side of his cheeks where his whisker marks would have been. On his forehead was what looked like a seal, Shiki Fujin. But it was cracked, and finally his eyes had a red sclera, blue iris and black slitted pupils. He pretty much would have looked intimidating if it wasn't for his size. Unknown location. In a white majestic chair sat, what any man could describe, was a bombshell of woman that could turn any gay man straight, with silver glowing hair, CD cup S, an hourglass figure, golden glowing eyes, wearing a red and blue robe. As she sat there, she couldn't help but think of one particular soul with an affectionate smile on her face, Naruto Uzumaki. I truly am sorry for what you've been through, but the world you lived in was beyond saving, Naruto. So I brought you to a place whose future is at stake, and you might tip the balance in the war that is to come. I just hope you'll understand one day and become the man you have potential of becoming one day, thought Kami with a slight blush on her cheeks. With a pain-filled scream, a large ape-like hollow smashed into the ground, covered in lacerations and blood. Its eyes were shining with fear and despair. No, stay away from me. I thought the story about you was just made up, he shouted out between labored breaths. A second later, a vaguely massive shape landed in front of him and sneered at the ape hollow. I don't care what you other hollows say about me. I fight to earn my strength, unlike you other hollows who go to the world of the living, killing off defenseless souls that can't even fight back, said the massive creature with a deep voice that could be heard miles away. The ape growled and tried to stand again. How is this possible? He muttered. I'm centuries older than you and 2 classes higher than you. How can I have lost to a weakling like you? The massive creature laughed. A few centuries older than me. At Ijuka's level, and this power is all you have to show for it, pathetic. The massive creature disappeared, only to reappear a second later in the same spot. The ape hollow blinked. Then as the ape hollow was made of building blocks, he fell to pieces, not even giving the blood a chance to spurt out. Well, that was a waste of my time, began Naruto. Byoku. Come here, girl, shouted Naruto. There was a few seconds of silence, then a hollow, half the size of Naruto, came rushing out of nowhere, towards him. When the hollow was right in front of him, she stood up on her hind legs and started licking his mask. Down, girl, he said in a playful tone. Look what I have here, said Naruto, pointing at the corpse of the hollow he killed earlier. Byoku didn't wait for Naruto to say any more as she was eating the dead hollow. Thinking back, Naruto couldn't help but remember the day he saved her. Flashback. In the gray desert, there was something that could only be described as a small object. Upon further inspection, you would see what appeared to be a pup of a small dog, but this one had a tiny mask on its face. Normally, any small animal hollow that lived in Hueco Mundo would be able to survive and not consume souls, just by breathing in the spirit energy that was in the atmosphere. The larger ones did need to consume souls, but their low intelligence made them have a high probability of being killed. There were exceptionally rare small animals that did have the hunger for souls, but their survival rate was even lower because the hunger would cause them to attack other hollows and most likely wouldn't win. It was the same with this little hollow. As Naruto came walking on the desert, back from killing another Ijukas, he noticed the tiny hollow constantly yelping out to no one. It's most likely crying out to its mother, thought Naruto, feeling sorry for the little pup. As the pup turned around, obviously noticing Naruto, it lunged for him, trying to dig its teeth into one of his claws. And hungry too, Naruto chuckled, then suddenly an idea came to him. He gently picked the little hollow up and reappeared to the recently killed Ijukas. These hollows that have been living off my kills will become a problem in the end, but if I fix that. As Naruto was thinking of the idea he came up with, he was meanwhile tearing off a piece of the Ijuka's corpse. He held it up to the little hollow, who bit down on the piece and eventually swallowed it. Spirit energy burst from the little hollow's body. Naruto put down the little hollow next to corpse while deep in thought. This little one is really lucky today. If it had been a Jillian I killed today and I fed it that, it would have most certainly turned into another Jillian, but if it eats an Ijukas. Flashback end. It had been many years since then. Naruto named her Byoku. At first, she attacked Naruto after becoming Ijukas from being fed by Naruto, but after being constantly fed by him and protected by him from the other dangerous hollows, she eventually became loyal to him. She was pretty much looked like a fur-less dog with a small hole on the right side of her chest. She was up to the chest of a Jillian in size. Naruto's appearance had changed most of all. He now had 8 tail, with crimson tips. The cracked seal on his forehead was almost faded. The spikes on his cheeks had become black, but the most thing he had been happy about was his size. He was now 35 meters tall. I'm just taking a guess on what size Kyuubi is. If anyone knows the accurate size, could you please tell me? In the years Naruto had been here, he learned a lot. He had gained many things as well: power, reputation, a good number of decent challenges. He was often mistaken for Ijukas due to his size and intelligence, but they learned just as quickly that he was not due to his Ritsu. No matter how large and different it was, and because his reputation of not eating any hollows, that they learned he was still a low-class hollow. This was why he was always a target for higher-class hollows. It did hurt their pride to know that a low-class hollow was moping the floor with them. What's worse was he was giving the dead hollows to his pet. There was a rumor that long before he had the pet, that he drew in a fight against a Vasto Lord. Las Noches. In dimly lit room, sat a man, who at first glance looked like he was enjoying the peace and quiet, but in his eyes, you could see power that radiated within them. Then out of the shadows came another figure with unusual smirk on his face. "What's the news, Jin?" said the figure sitting down in a calm, chilling voice. The one now named Jin smirked even more. "If it could be possible, there's been a rumor you might be interested in. It's about a low-class hollow." "Why would I be interested in a hollow that is low-class, unless you are trying to annoy me, Jin?" said the other figure in a bored tone. "Not at all, Aizen Taiko, but the rumor is that this hollow managed to draw in a fight with a Vasto Lord. has not eaten a single soul and has kept getting stronger just by fighting. The man named Aizen was completely shocked by this. He never thought such a hollow could exist. He would have gathered more information on this unique hollow and find out if this hollow would become a threat or an ally. With that thought he smiled. The future is certainly becoming more interesting. Today was a big day for Byoku. She was finally transforming into a Vasto Lord. Naruto could say he was excited himself, but mostly relieved because with her being in Ijukas, he would constantly have to feed her hollows, to prevent her from becoming a Jillian. Sometimes hunting for her would bring good challenges to him, but most of the time they were just weaklings. As she was transforming, Naruto noticed her size was becoming smaller until she was around 4 foot tall. The hole on the right side of her chest was the size of a ping-pong ball. She was now covered in a deep black fur and on her tail were multiple spikes. Naruto pretty much looked like a titan to her now. With one great leap, she jumped up onto the snout of his stared to rub her mask with his. Naruto just chuckled to her affectionate actions and gently scratched her behind the ears with one of his claws. Byoku just started stamping her foot, approving of the scratch being received. How about we go on a vacation to the living world, Byoku? I've been here so long I can hardly remember what the color of the sky is, said Naruto in a nostalgic voice. While it was true that Naruto was younger than most of the hollow in Hueco Mundo, the only reason Naruto did not know his age was because unlike other hollows, never once had he left Hueco Mundo and in a place that was constant night. How would you tell if a day had gone past? He had tried to open a Garganta to his old village many times but no such portal would open. He eventually gave up on the idea of trying to get there. It's not like anyone I knew will be alive now anyway, sneered Naruto at the thought. If only he knew how right he was. With no other thought coming to mind, Naruto opened up a Garganta and stepped through with Byoku on his snout, not caring what danger lurked round the corner. Seireitii, Taiko meeting. Now that everybody is here, will you explain why you have called this meeting so urgently? Kuritsuchi Taiko? Spoke Yamamoto Sutaichu in a curious and yet demanding voice. An odd man with face painting on, his hat on sideways and he had some sort of metal cup attached to his chin and ears was the next to speak. I called meeting because there are 2 Ryotsu signals in the living world that are of hollows and both energies are that of Vasto Lord level. Immediately there were shouts across the room. Silence, demanded Yamamoto. Now the situation must handled carefully. We all know it is extremely rare for Vasto Lord hollows to come to the world of the living. So it does raise suspicion as to why there are 2 in the living world right now. Why is there a need to handle it carefully? Let's just kill them and get it over with. Spoke Kenpachi Zaraki. He stood at a height 6 feet 6 and he had scars on his face and spiky hair with bells attached with a captain's uniform and had a Zanpakuto strapped to his waist and he wore an eye patch. An all-out confrontation with them will only result in many casualties to the humans that will be there, so I am sending you, Soifin Taiko, to the area of the hollows to gather information on their purpose of coming to the living world. But if things start to get out of hand, contact us immediately. If that is all, then this meeting is now over. Karakura town. If some of you are wondering, it's a bit of a coincidence that he ends up there. My story would have no point if he ended up in London and never meets Ichigo. Out of the Garganta came a massive spiritual pressure that caused everyone able to sense it to gasp in fear. The energy flooding the city was wild and uncontrolled. A massive creature with what appeared to be a dog on its snout came out of the portal, basking in their new surroundings. The Garganta snapped shut and the spiritual pressure lifted, but the people who were able to sense it could still feel a slight pressure on them. It's good to finally get some fresh air, he exclaimed with a huge grin while Byoku wagged her tail profusely. He looked down towards the city and felt his eyes grow wide. Never had he heard, nor seen such an advanced place before. There were metal contraptions moving somehow all over the place. There were buildings as big as he was and all these people were living happy carefree lives as if war didn't come round the corner, like it did in Konoha. Guess it's time to go sightseeing. Naruto's only response was a yip from Byoku. Soifin had just come through Senkai Gate and already could she feel the vast amount of Ryotsu coming from the hollows. One on par with a captain and the other was above that of most captains, but it was hard to get an estimate, with it fluctuating. As soon as she felt it, she rushed to the general area, making sure to stay out of sight. What the? She couldn't believe what she was seeing. It was like this Fox Hollow was a mix of different Manos class. Jillian for height, even though He probably the biggest hollow she was going to put on record. Ijuka's for shape, but it was a lot better than most ugly hollows she'd seen in Vasto Lord for spiritual pressure. Then she remembered there were two of them. On further inspection she saw the other one on top of the other hollow, wagging its tail and tongue sticking out. This made Soifan stare at it as if it was crazy, but then something came to realization. It actually is a dog turned hollow. Has this shit of reality hit the fan of what? Thought Soifan. She followed both hollows, noticing the large hollow carefully walk on buildings to not collapse them. The pluses were being completely ignored too, and it seemed the hollow had its interest in the city itself. Had this hollow not seen technology before? She turned to see what the small dog hollow was doing, and what she saw completely stunned her to the core. There on the hollow's back was a girl plus riding on its back laughing. What was with these two? One was like a curious child and the other was obviously a tamed animal. She wasn't the only one to notice them either. One group with a blonde man, a large man with glasses, a pair of children and a black cat were watching also. They weren't sure what was going on, but they decided to keep hidden for now. However, if these hollows started causing too much trouble, they'd move in quickly and kill them. But just from what they could feel, these two had no aura of malice or cruelty. It was surprising. At the end of the day, Soifan opened the Senkai gate and stepped through, though there was a grimace of regret on her face as to what would most likely happen to these hollows once she came back to Soul Society. Probably become one of that sick bastard Mayuri's science experiments. Naruto turned around to see the Senkai gate close. He noticed her and a couple of others spying on him, but if they left him alone, he'd leave them. Suddenly a shattering pain erupted through him and he was shrinking rapidly until he was 5 feet 9. The last thing he saw was Byoku guarding him while a what looked like a man, as far as he could tell with his blurry vision, walk up to him. Wah! As Naruto opened his eyes, he saw that he was surrounded by clear blue skies and clouds floating by going wherever the breeze took them. It was peaceful and calming to him. Then he looked to himself. He had a human body again. His clothing was different too. He now wore a dark crimson, short-sleeved hooded hakama with black medical tape wrapped around both his biceps, but to his shock there was no hole in his chest. He touched his face with his hands and again, you could see the shock in his eyes. Not a single fragment of his mask was on his face. I'm human again. Not exactly. Naruto turned around quickly and saw a figure that was obscured by the clouds, slowly approaching. From the voice, he could only assume it was a male. Who are you and what do you want? I am a part of you, Naruto. It was only when you absorbed the last of the energy of the seal, could I call out to you. It was only when he stopped talking could Naruto finally see him. There were countless scars on his topless muscled chest, toned stomach and arms, and they seemed to glow blue. His legs were barely covered by a badly damaged hakama. The only thing holding it up was a white chain being used as a belt. His hair was short and silver, sticking towards the direction of his face. His face was one that any married woman would leave their husband just to feel their lips against his, while looking into his bright turquoise eyes. But there was a hollow hole in the middle of his chest. Part of me absorbed a seal? What are you talking about? Naruto said in confusion. Now is not the time, we'll meet again soon, he replied. Naruto was about to move towards him for answers, but he started falling from sky, until he saw nothing. Urahara's shop. Naruto sat up from the futon, as if he just had a nightmare. He noticed Byoku, curled up asleep next to him and a sheathed sword on the other side of him, but he didn't pay attention to it right now. So you're finally awake. Naruto quickly looked across the room to see man, who was wearing a green and white hat standing at door entrance with a black cat on his shoulder. You've been asleep all night. I saw you asleep on the street and being the good person I am, brought you here, he said with a fan covering his face. Don't lie to me. I noticed you and a few others spying on me before, so I'm guessing you're a Soul Reaper, but if that's true, why haven't you killed me yet? Naruto replied in a suspicious manner. The man tilted his head with the hat covering his eyes and spoke with a chilling voice. You're quite perceptive. Yes, I am a Soul Reaper, but I don't work for the Seirei anymore, and as to why I haven't killed you is because you're not exactly a hollow anymore. The only thing that's the same is your eyes. Naruto blinked. Not a hollow anymore, but how? Before we go any further, we should introduce ourselves. My name is Urahara Kazuki and the cat here is called Shiwan Yoruichi. What's yours? How long had it been that he told anyone his name? He felt a smile come to his face. Knowing he could finally properly talk to someone without them looking at him, as if he was food, it's Uzumaki Naruto. Well Naruto, have you ever heard of the term Arrancar? Naruto just nodded his head. Almost every hollow had heard of it before. It was a hollow that had broken off a part of its mask and gained Shinigami powers. You see, if you think of it as a percentage, Arrancars are 75% hollow and 25% Shinigami. There is another type out there called Vizards, which you probably have never heard of. They are 75% Shinigami and 25% hollow. But then there's you," said Kazuki. "What do you mean? I did some scans on your body earlier and got some interesting results. It seems that you're something completely different. Your body is 50% hollow and 50% Shinigami. My guess is that you have the best of both sides, but first we need come up with a new name for what you are." Naruto thought about it. If Soul Reapers didn't exist, hollows would overrun the earth and cause extinction, but if there were no hollows, Soul Reapers would become arrogant and powerful and start to rule the humans as if they were gods. But with both, there was harmony to keep each other's numbers in check. It was then he came up with the perfect name. Surei. Balance. Urahara chuckled. It's a fitting name. How about we make a deal? I hope you fit in society here and learn our ways. To give you a better life than the one you lived previously, and in return, you owe me one favor to help me when I ask for it. What about Byoku? Even though he wouldn't admit it, he grew attached to her over the years, and if this deal didn't include her, he wouldn't accept it. Well, for her, I'm sorry to say this, but wait a minute, where is that dog? When Naruto looked to his side, there was no dog there, but then they heard a yell and rushed towards its direction. What do you have to report, Soifun Taiko? Asked Yamamoto Sutaichu. Soifun went into detail of the two hollow, about how they didn't even attempt to hurt anyone or cause damage, how one was bigger than a Jillian and the other was an animal, and finally their reason to coming to the real world was to sightseeing. It's too bad, they would have been excellent research specimens as to why they became less hostile to humans, said Mayuri in a dulled tone because of losing two research subjects. Soifun was disgusted with Mayuri as her thoughts turned out to be right about his intentions, but then her face turned into confusion by what he had just said. Yamamoto saw the look on her face and gave her the explanation. The two hollows Riryoku disappeared soon after you left. It would most likely mean that they went back to Hueco Mundo, but it disturbs me greatly as to why they came. Excuse me Sutaichu, but I think I've heard of these two hollows before, spoke Aizen in a calm and friendly tone. Everyone looked at him. How could he know these two hollows, and if he did, why didn't he tell anyone about it? As if understanding their questioning gaze, he answered, about 4 months ago I wrote a report when me and my squad went on a training exercise. We encountered a nest of hollows and planned to destroy them. I separated myself from my squad, taking on the main bulk of the hollows, giving my squad a better chance of survival, but I left a detail out of the report because I thought it was inconsequential. One hollow kept screaming about getting revenge by killing a fox-type hollow that doesn't eat souls and its pet. At first I thought the hollow was muttering random nonsense, but after Soifun's report, I believe that is not the case. The other captains were shocked by what he said. A hollow that doesn't eat souls. It was unthinkable. All Shinigami knew that a hollow's hunger for souls was unquenchable, but here was a hollow that denied its hunger and instincts. Its willpower must be unbreakable. We will make a priority to capture this hollow alive the next time it makes an appearance in the living world, to find out about its actions and how such a hollow can exist. If that is all, then this meeting is now over, commanded the Sutaichu. Urahara's shop. It had been an hour since Byoku lost consciousness by eating the mod soul. Naruto and Urahara were talking, while Byoku was next to Naruto asleep. So Urahara, what was it you was gonna say about Byoku before she disappeared? Well, I was going to tell you that we'd have to preform a Kanso on her because she is a hollow. Now don't get me wrong, but even though you might stop her from eating souls, the moment she leaves this shop, the Soul Society will detect her Ryotsu again. Hollows don't have the ability to hide their Ryotsu. This is true as stated by Aizen on episode 61, and she isn't intelligent enough to know that. Before Naruto could say anything, there was a blinding light coming from Byoku. As they waited for the light to dim, they noticed her body become even smaller until she was now only 3 foot tall. The mask on her face broke off until there was only her bottom jaw covered. Think of Yami's mask. And her hollow hole was completely gone. I know what some of you may be thinking, but it is possible. For example, Halibal and Nalil don't appear to have hollow holes. So why not Byoku? And the spikes on her tail had vanished until there was an ordinary black tail. If the mask wasn't there, people would mistake her for an ordinary black German shepherd. Byoku lifted her head and faced Naruto's direction and spoke, "Master." Naruto and Urahara had a look of complete shock written on their faces. Byoku had transformed into an Arankar and just spoke and called Naruto master. How can this be possible? Mod souls were only to be placed in an artificial body, but with an actual soul swallowing it. The soul would break down and die from the foreign Riryoku inside the mod soul. But maybe because she's a hollow, it caused a different reaction. Hollows eat souls, but with her eating a mod soul it merged with her instead, causing her to gain intelligence, and maybe she'll have the ability from the mod soul. It could be even stronger with her at Vasto Lord level, thought Kazuki. Is that you, Byoku? Said Naruto, not sure if he was imaging anything. Of course it is, who else would it be? Said Byoku in a curious tone, as if she had always had the ability to talk. After Urahara told them his theory about Byoku and there would no longer be a need to preform a Kanso, which Naruto was glad, he went into detail of how he would create them a Gigai to live freely in the city, how he'd train them to hide their Ryotsu from Shinigami and train them in their new powers, and to be honest, Kazuki was a bit excited by that. He'll be the first to see the abilities of a mod soul Arankar and a Tsurei. Soon after, the black cat from before walked into the room next to Urahara, but before Naruto could say anything, the cat started to transform, and soon after there was a purple-haired, dark-colored skin and a great pair of C-cup-s naked woman smirking at him as if waiting for his reaction. Naruto stared at her for a good few seconds, while his face was red as a tomato, and then he did something unexpected and started looking at Byoku. "What?" said Byoku, not understanding until something clicked. She swatted Naruto's head hard with her tail, then you could see steam coming from Naruto's limp body. "Because she can't transform into a naked woman, don't expect me to, you pervert," said a fuming Byoku, while Kazuki and Yoruichi chuckled as the latter was putting some clothes on. As Kazuki taught them how to hide their Ryotsu, they also learned a lot about the city in the weeks that passed. The Gigai that Urahara created for them had minor adjustments to them so there would be no hollow mask on Byoku's and ordinary eyes on Naruto's. Eventually Urahara got them their own place to stay with their own account so they wouldn't have to worry about money for a while, but then came Naruto's misfortune. "I have to what?" said Naruto with a tick mark on his head. "You have to go to school to learn more about society and to be able to get a job, to be independent, but remember Naruto, you owe me a favor," said Urahara while covering his grin with his fan. Naruto just sighed, thinking about what the future held for him. Ichigo Kurosaki sighed. It was turning out to be another boring day in his life, with his father trying to constantly fight whenever he was home and his father always getting beat up for it, and then eating breakfast with his sisters, Karen and Yuzu, then heading to school. However, he had noticed someone his age that he had never seen before dressed in a school uniform hanging around inside the school. Some of the other students mentioning he was a new student. Ichigo had to rub his eyes just to make sure he wasn't seeing things. If it wasn't for the blonde hair, blue eyes and the weird marks on his cheeks, Ichigo would have sworn he found his long-lost twin. Not just the fact they looked identical, but this new guy was also pulling the exact same frown he did and his eyes showed pain in them. It told Ichigo that this person carried a heavy burden in his heart just like him. The new guy was about the same size as himself. He also noticed he had a similar build as himself, telling him this guy was definitely a fighter. Then the new student started walking up to him and his group of Chad, Kiego and Mizuira. "Excuse me, but you don't mind if I sit with you guys, right? I'm Naruto Uzumaki, a new student here." Ichigo nodded. "My name is Ichigo Kurosaki," and Naruto was quickly introduced to the rest of the gang. Ichigo saw everyone looking at him and the new guy. He guessed everyone was just as stunned at the resemblance just as he was. Tatsuki walked in feeling much better after practicing some physical therapy on Chizuru after she tried to molest Orihime again. She spotted someone she didn't recognize and figured it was the new guy everyone was talking about. He looked over his shoulder at her and both of them just stared at each other for a good minute or two. She fought down a blush that was threatening to appear on her cheeks. No one had looked at her that intensely before. Just when she was about to do something, Orihime saw her and dragged her by the arm up to the new student, to introduce themselves. "Hi, my name is Orihime and this is my friend Tatsuki, it's nice to meet you. My name's Naruto Uzumaki, it's a pleasure to meet you and your lovely friend. Orihime smiled while Tatsuki blushed at the compliment. Orihime, being innocent as always, asked more questions. Are you related to Ichigo because you look almost like him? Both Naruto and Ichigo looked at each other and both said in union, no way in hell. Everyone just sweat dropped thinking, they've got to be related. As soon as lunch came and everyone went outside to eat, a group of 6 people came walking up to Naruto. The first person talk, who Naruto would have guessed, was their ringleader. So you're the new kid in school, we've got a few rules for people like you, who stand out from everyone else, so why don't you just give us your money and lunch every day and there'll be no problems. It seemed the commotion had drawn a big crowd as both Tatsuki and Ichigo's group were there as well. Ha ha, me against you 6 isn't exactly fair, is it? Naruto said with a smirk. We don't care about fair. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Said the ringleader as everyone saw Naruto strap his right arm against his waist. What does it look like? I'm making it more fair for you to fight me. Now everyone was shocked. Did they just hear right? The new student was gonna fight this group of 6 with only one arm. For Ichigo, it was proving his theory about Naruto being a fighter after all. Tatsuki, even though she would never admit it, was excited. If Naruto could actually back up his words and fight them with one arm, she might have found a person to join her club and a good sparring partner. When the leader charged, a powerful force stopped him in his tracks. He looked down to see a clenched fist buried in his stomach. He looked up to see Naruto's face and it didn't even look serious, as if he was taking this fight as a joke, but then suddenly his eyes rolled into the back of his head. Everyone stood in shock, they hardly saw him move. That's when the rest of the gang jumped in, and the more the fight went on, the harder it was to pick their jaws off the ground. Naruto was treating them as if they were child's play, but what truly shocked them was when the last thug standing did manage to punch Naruto's face. He was the one screaming with a broken hand, while Naruto wiped away the imaginary dirt off his cheek. At the end of it, the gang ran off, threatening that they'll get revenge on him, which Naruto laughed at. There were various emotions running through the crowd that had watched the fight. Some were awed and some were afraid, but surprisingly a lot of the girls were blushing, and Tatsuki was not exception to this. Orihime just cheered and congratulating Naruto on his fight. Ichigo just held out his hand and Naruto shook it as both were smirking at each other. Do you know why they wanted to fight me? Naruto asked with a clueless look on face. People are like that around here, they don't like anybody who stands out such as you, me and Chad, said Ichigo while pointing to the giant Mexican. Hey Naruto, I was just wondering if you'd like to come to my club and have a spar sometime, said Tatsuki with the blush still on her face. Sure, I'll let you know when I get settled in, Naruto replied with a smile on his face, which made Tatsuki's blush go a few shades redder. After school, Ichigo was walking along an alley, coming back from school, when he saw some punks on skateboards knock over a glass bottle with flowers in it. He ran up to the closest one and kicked him in the back. The said person's head hit the ground, knocking him out. The other skateboarders stopped. You got a death wish, pal? The biggest of them said as he stepped forward. Nobody jumps one of my boys for no reason and lives to tell the tale, he said as he stepped forward. Was Ichigo's reply. That's all you gotta say? The punk charged, and was met with a foot to the face. He fell down and Ichigo's foot slammed into his back repeatedly. Little Yama's down, we gotta help him, said one of them. The others replied to him. Are you crazy? No way am I taking on that psycho. Ichigo meanwhile was continuously stamping his foot into Yama's head so hard his face was being buried into the pavement. He finished and looked up, giving Yama's friends a glare. Listen up, you pawn scum, you see that? He asked harshly, pointing at the knocked over bottle. First question. What do you think that is? You, the one in the middle, answer, he shouted. The one he was addressing looked around, and was frightened to find he was the one in the middle. Wait, you talking to me? He said, pointing to himself. I guess somebody left those flowers for some kid who got killed here. Ichigo then kicked him in the face, sending him flying and causing the other two to yell out in fear. Correct, Ichigo yelled. Wait, chill out, said one of them quickly. Now, the next question. Why is that vase lying down? I guess one of us knocked it over when we were skateboarding through here, said the one who was on Ichigo's left, shaking in fear. Ichigo gave a roundhouse kick to both of their faces. You idiots, catch on fast, now go and apologize, or next time the flowers will be here for you. A shadow covering his face and flames appeared behind him, making him look like some sort of devil. which is ironic since his resurrection form looks live a devil. The two he had kicked screamed and ran with the third following, all screaming, "We sorry. There, that ought to keep those punks from showing their ugly faces around here." A girl appeared behind him, floating in the air, standing next to the pole. "Sorry about all that, I'll bring you by some new flowers tomorrow." Before she could reply, someone else beat her to it. "I saw your fight, Ichigo, you did pretty good, and who's your cute ghostly friend?" Said ghost blushed. Ichigo turned to the direction of the voice and saw Naruto walking up to him. "Are you saying you can see her?" Ichigo asked in surprise. "Yeah, thank you for coming to my defense. I think now I'll be able to rest peacefully," said the little girl. "No problem, it's the least I could do, after all you deserve to rest in peace," Ichigo said as he straightened up the bottle of flowers and waved her goodbye, as she disappeared. "So why are you here, Naruto?" Ichigo asked curiously. "This is the closest way to my apartment," Naruto answered simply. "How long have you been able to see spirits?" Naruto thought about this. "Well, I've been dead since I was 8, fought hollows after that, and hollows are classed as evil spirits, so I'll go with that." "When I was 8 years old, what about you?" "Since I can remember," was Ichigo's reply. "Well, my apartment's not far from here, so I guess I'll see you tomorrow at school, Ichigo," said Naruto, waving goodbye. "Yeah, see you later." When Naruto got in his apartment, Byoku was calmly eating some cooked food. How she cooked it we'll never know, at the table, while sitting on one of the chairs. "I'm going to bed early today, Byoku. I've had a long day, so good night." "Good night, master," Byoku replied. "Now, but these two might be able to answer more of them than I can," said the mysterious figure as he disappeared. A couple of seconds later, out of the corner of his eye, Naruto saw two people walking up to him. They were clearly a male and female. Just by one glance, Naruto recognized one of them. The male was slightly taller than Naruto. His eyes were bright shining blue that Naruto used to have. His hair was a bright yellow and spiked just like his own, while he wore a short-sleeve long white coat with red flame edges and the kanji, 4th Hokage, written vertically down on the back. The second person was smaller than Naruto. She had a slender but highly feminine build. She had long, red hair that reached down to her calves with strands that framed both sides of her face that parted to the left of her head with a hair clip. She wore a loose-fitting dress with an apron. Her skin was pale and her eyes were violet. There was a good minute of silence until Naruto finally spoke. What the hell is going on?" Naruto said in utter shock, pointing at the 4th Hokage frantically, while the two people just had sad smiles on their faces. They both walked up to Naruto at a slow pace, as not to startle him like a cornered animal. Minato was the first to speak. "It's been a long time, Naruto. I'm surprised you still remember me from the academy textbooks," he said, while Naruto was still too shocked to say anything. "The truth is, we're trying to explain something but we don't know where to begin." Finally Naruto gained enough courage to talk. "How about the very beginning?" As if it was the most simple thing in the world. Minato just stared and then chuckled at him because of the straight answer. "Okay then, you already heard that I defeated the Kyuubi, didn't you?" He just received a nod in reply. "Well, that's not exactly true. The Kyuubi is made of a mass of chakra and has no physical body, so killing it is pretty much out of the question. So I designed a seal for it to be contained in a baby's body and summoned the Shinigami to pull out the Kyuubi's soul and place it in the baby for the price of my own soul. I told Sarutobi to tell everyone the child was a hero, but that didn't happen, and by the look on your face, you know who that baby was, don't you?" said Minato, not even trying to hide the sadness in his voice. The next thing that happened was Naruto's fist connecting with Minato's face and sent him flying a couple of meters back. Minato nor the woman showed any shock to Naruto's reaction. They kept silent. Then Naruto spoke. "I don't hate you for sealing the demon inside of me. After all, you was protecting those that were precious to you," spoke Naruto, barely containing his anger. "But you put too much faith into the people of that village, and I was the one left to get all the villagers' anger because of your actions. You could have told Sarutobi to hide my identity, but you wanted me to be seen as a hero. It makes you think how much corruption seeped into Konoha. If they didn't listen to a dying Hokage's last wish, what will they listen to?" Minato's heart was breaking inside. Pretty much everything Naruto said was true. He could have told Sarutobi to hide his identity, but his faith in the villagers blinded him, and for that, his son paid the price with his life and suffered many years alone in a desert, fighting for his soul. Kushina wanted to do something to help the situation, but her mouth wouldn't speak. If Naruto had been angry at Minato for sealing the fox inside him, she would stuck with Minato's side, defending him, but Naruto was mad about Minato having too much faith in people. She couldn't defend Minato there. Naruto's death was a testament to that. She slowly walked up to Naruto and stood right in front of him. There was an awkward for few seconds, while Naruto was thinking why this mysterious woman was standing in front of him. Then suddenly the woman wrapped her around him and hugged him. "I am sorry, my little boy, we never planned any of this for you. We always hoped you would be a great shinobi and give us grandkids to spoil, but me and your father never imagined it would be our very own village that would cause your death." Kushina was now in tears. She had heard there's no such thing as perfect parents, and even though it wasn't her fault, she felt like she and Minato had screwed up royally on the first day. Naruto was stunned. This woman had admitted to be his mother and that his father was the fourth Hokage. At first Naruto was furious to learn that his own father caused his so much misery, but his mother crying on his shoulder seemed to wash all that anger away, and he would not be angry towards his father anymore if it meant his mother being happy. His arms wrapped around her waist while he openly cried with her. He would not even care if the whole world could see him right now. Minato just smiled at the sight of Naruto and Kushina having their private moment. "I bet someone has a incest perverted thought then. I'm also having Naruto as a bit of a mama's boy, just like Ichigo was with his mother." When their emotions finally calmed down, they finally separated themselves. Mother and son stared at each other smiling. It seemed like they had finally woke up from a never-ending nightmare, and each other's voices is what woke them up. "I guess it's finally time to tell you how we're here," Minato said in a soft, happy voice, being careful not to ruin their comfort. Naruto just turned to his dad and nodded in reply. Soon as all three of them were comfortable, Kushina began to tell him how they were here. "Well, the seal your father designed to contain the Kyuubi was made from his chakra, and he asked me to pour some of mine into it as well. Originally the seal was also designed if that you lost control of Kyuubi's chakra and went up to 8 tails, your father would appear in your mind and fix the seal. If you were to release the seal and to attempt to control the Kyuubi's chakra, I would appear and help you to control it." After her long-winded speech, Minato took over. "But because of your death, something else happened. The seal was made so that a small amounts of the Kyuubi's chakra would go to you, but when you died, both you and Kyuubi's chakra turned into Riryoku, spirit energy. Normally, any of the chakra that was given to you by the Kyuubi could be replenished by him. But when you died, you started to absorb his soul instead, but to be more accurate, you was only absorbing a part of a soul." Naruto was fully confused now. If Naruto only absorbed a part of it, then where was the rest? "I'm not even going to dare explain about the yin and yang of Kyuubi's chakra, so this chapter might change a bit in the future when we get more details about it." Seeing Naruto's confused expression, Minato gave a light chuckle of understanding. "It's okay, Naruto, I understand what I'm saying doesn't make sense, but just be patient. When I was in the seal I discovered you were absorbing Kyuubi, but from what I learned about hollows, the more powerful soul gains control of the body. That is when I was confused as to why you was still in control. It nearly drove me insane trying to find an answer, but then, I had a theory. What if the Kyuubi was only a piece of a soul? But then where would the other pieces be? Then it hit me like your mum's frying pan to the head." Said mum pulled a frying pan out of nowhere and hit him on the head with it. Naruto was just laughing ass off at the comedy show in front of him. After Minato stopped with the anime tears, he continued to explain. "Well, if the Kyuubi is only a piece of a soul, then what about the other Biju? That is when I came with the idea that maybe there was once a Biju that was somehow split into the 9-tailed demons." Naruto couldn't fault the man's logic, even though it was a far stretch of a theory, but did not question it, as long as he was permanently in control. Finally it was Kushina's turn to speak. "Now that we've gotten past that pain-in-the-ass explanation, very much so, we can finally explain how we're here. We are the last fragments of the seal, Naruto, and soon we're going to disappear, as we are using the remaining of our energy to talk with you. So before we go, me and Minato want to tell you about ourselves and to know more about you." Naruto wanted to cry out to them, to somehow make them stay, but he knew it wouldn't change anything, it would only waste precious time he had left with them. His mother began first about how she was bullied at school for her head resembling a tomato, so she beat them to a bloody pulp, earning the title, the Red Hot-Blooded Habanero. She told him that she was kidnapped by Cloud Ninja, that Minato had tracked her down by the trail of red hair and rescued her, which caused them to fall in love. Minato told him about his training under a perverted sensei who wrote novels, then the time he trained his own squad and that he was proud of them. He bragged about how invented a jutsu that greatly helped winning the war, and finally where him and Kushina got Naruto's name from his sensei's very first book. There wasn't much for Naruto to talk about really. He told them that the only people nice to him was Sarutobi, Ayame and Tucci. He had a pet dog called Byoku, that was a mod soul Arankar, and he started to go to an ordinary school and made some friends. It was then that Naruto could see them start to fade. It wrenched his heart, but he would be strong in front of them. He hugged them with all the love he could give, and still, it was not enough for Naruto to show them how he truly felt. Naruto, grow strong so you can protect others that are close to your heart, but be sure not to fail like did for you and your mother, said Minato as he finally faded. As for my piece of advice to you, Naruto, find happiness with someone you love, because there is hardly such thing as true love anymore, and you're the one who deserves it the most. Finally, give me grandchildren so I can spoil them rotten in heaven. Then she too faded with a warm smile on her face. Naruto blushed at her last statement but nonetheless nodded to her request. It was that mysterious person appeared again. Naruto had finally had enough of this person started asking questions. How do you know so much about me, and just who are you? Said Naruto, irritated to no end at this stoic man. The unknown person was quiet for a few seconds before his lips began to move. I've been with you since the beginning of your life, Naruto. I'm your Zanpakuto, and as for my name, it's... How do you know so much about me, and just who are you? Said Naruto, irritated to no end at this stoic man. The unknown person was quiet for a few seconds before his lips began to move. I've been with you since the beginning of your life, Naruto. I'm your Zanpakuto, and as for my name, it's... Atami Genkei. Pain limit, at least I hope it's the correct translation. Naruto just nodded his head, indicating he heard him. I'm pleased you heard my name, but I shouldn't be surprised. After everything you've been through, nothing should hold you back from hearing it. I am a Zanjutsu, Hakuda type Zanpakuto. You'll have to fight to find out my abilities. There's also something else troubling you, isn't there? You've been wondering how you became to what you call a Tsurei for the past few weeks. Naruto said nothing, but he didn't need to. His shocked face and eyes shining with anticipation was enough for Atami Genkei to continue his explanation. There has always been a barrier between Hollow and Shinigami, but there have been cases where Hollows have removed a piece of their mask to gain Shinigami powers. I've never heard of Shinigami having Hollow powers, but it's most likely possible. Your form came from your willpower. You dominated your instincts by not eating souls, which definitely would have turned you into an Arankar instead if you had. The Shinigami your father summoned was different than the ones in this world. That one ate souls but did not need to in order to survive. Its eyes were similar to a Hollow's but had no hole or mask either. It pushed the Kyuubi's soul into your very being, making yours and the Shinigami's soul briefly make contact. Are you saying that this Shinigami Hollow hybrid was a Tsurei like me and I got my Shinigami powers from it? Also, how come you know so much about this Shinigami and I don't? Yes and no, the Shinigami in that world is similar to you, but its powers are different from yours. When you traveled to this world, the energy inside you changed to match this dimension's energy. The reason why you became a Tsurei is because after the final part of the Kyuubi was absorbed, the Shinigami's energy finally awoke, when Kyuubi's energy was no longer there to suppress it. As for how I know that Shinigami, you'll have to wait until the next time we meet. You're starting to wake up. True to his word, Naruto began to fade from his mindscape and back into reality. Naruto sat up in his bed with a smile on his face, knowing he was loved by his parents and not just abandoned like many of the cruel villagers had said to him, making feel worse than he already did. Today had been a boring day for Naruto. On his way to school he sensed a Hollow nearby, but then he sensed a Shinigami. Not long after, the Hollow's Ryotsu disappeared, meaning the Shinigami probably killed it. He sensed Ichigo in the area as well. He made sure to hide his Ryotsu from the Shinigami. It wouldn't bode well if the Shinigami found out he had Ryotsu, similar to a Shinigami and a Hollow. Other than that, school was the same old boring work. Late at night he sensed another Hollow coming his direction, or to be more specific, Kurosaki Clinic. Damn it, I should have known more Hollows would come after Ichigo for his spirit energy. It seems that I might as well see the outcome and hopefully, not have to save Strawberry's ass. Naruto put a soul pill in his mouth and was ejected from his Gigai, regular soul pills. He jumped from rooftop to rooftop until he was in clear view of Ichigo's house, just in time to see the same Shinigami he sensed before, stab Ichigo with her Zanpakuto. After Ichigo dealt with the hollow, he fell unconscious, while the Shinigami brought Ichigo back to his house and wiped out his family's memory. Afterwards Urahara came and offered to help her. The Shinigami left with him but not before Urahara turned back to look at Naruto, who nodded to him and left. The next day Naruto walked on his way to school, when he noticed Ichigo and his family standing outside of their home, with a big hole in it. "Hey Ichigo, what happened to your house?" Ichigo and his family turned around to see Naruto walking down the street. Yuzu, Karen and Isshin were just goggle-eyed staring at him, looking back and forth towards Naruto and Ichigo because of their uncanny resemblance. "Oh Naruto, it's nothing, just some truck hit our house last night," Ichigo commented, using the same excuse his family had. "Oh my god, my dear wife had a twin son but accidentally kept the evil one. I should have known by the very sight of his devil-colored hair," Isshin shouted, pointing accusingly at Ichigo. The others were staring at him in bewilderment while Ichigo's eyebrows were twitching madly. The next thing Isshin knew was a fist, hitting square in face. "I got my hair color from my mother, you idiot. This is my family Naruto, the blonde one is Yuzu. The other girl is Karen and the clueless chimp is our dad." Ichigo turned to his family. "This is Naruto Uzumaki, he's a new student at school. It's nice to meet you. I could help you clean up the mess after school. I don't live far from here so it's no trouble at all." Isshin turned to him. "That would be much appreciated Naruto. You see Ichigo, unlike you, your twin brother is polite, so you must be the evil one." After that was said Isshin and Ichigo started fighting, with Ichigo pretty much winning. "Does this happen a lot?" questioned Naruto, while Yuzu and Karen just sighed and nodded their heads. After the morning incident, Ichigo and Naruto made it to school late. Later on the way to class, Ichigo bumped into Orihime, knocking her down and in a rather bored tone said, "Oh it's you. Hey Orihime." Orihime looked up at Ichigo and said, "Oh no, I'm sorry," but before she could finish, Tatsuki stood in front of Ichigo. "Ichigo, you knock her down and that's all you can say. What the heck's the matter with you?" Naruto knelt down, picked up her books and passed them to her. "You okay Orihime?" said Naruto asked, offering her a hand. She just smiled and took the offered hand, as Ichigo walked over. "Sorry about that, are you gonna be alright?" Ichigo apologized, in a caring note. It's alright, really. I have VV volleyball." "Why yeah, that's right volleyball," she repeated as she jogged down the hall. "What's the matter with her?" Ichigo asked, confused. "What could it be? Maybe it was your ugly mug. By the way, are you two so late? I mean, it's time for lunch already," Tatsuki said. "It was Strawberry here, he had wrestling match with his dad. If that's what they call father-son bonding, they can keep it the hell away from me." Tatsuki laughed as Naruto ducked a punch from Ichigo. "We'll see you later Tatsuki-chan, come on Ichigo." Tatsuki just blushed at the suffix, unable to come up with anything to say. In class, Ichigo was sitting in a chair while Naruto and the gang talked about the truck that crashed into his house last night. When someone else entered the room Naruto became alert. It was the Soul Reaper from last night. "Hello, you're Ichigo aren't you?" Ichigo turned and suddenly, his mind shut down unable to process what he was seeing. "I'll be sitting next to you from now on. My name is Rukia." Ichigo jumped out of his chair, as it had caught fire. It's you," he said pointing a finger at the new girl. Keigo spoke the first question. "Ichigo, what's wrong with you?" Chad looked at his friend. "You two know each other?" "Of course not, we've never met before, isn't that right Ichigo?" "Rukia's a brand new transfer student," mentioned Mizuira. "Nice to meet ye," said Keigo. "It's a pleasure." Naruto saw Ichigo's face turn to horror when he saw Rukia's palm. "It looks like my life got a little bit more interesting." It had been weeks since Ichigo became a Soul Reaper and Naruto's life indeed became interesting. He found himself spending more time Tatsuki, sparring with each other, while Naruto didn't actually have any fighting style because of having to adapt to fight in a human body. His speed, strength and tough skin made up for it. So him and Tatsuki had an unspoken agreement. He would fight her to toughen her body up and help quicken her reaction time. She'd in return help him learn a style to cause maximum damage to an opponent with minimal effort. Tatsuki had to admit the brutal training she went through with Naruto pushed her body to new limits that would have taken months to reach if she stuck with her usual training. Unknown to Naruto though, Tatsuki's attraction towards him increased by the day. Her parents had always taught her to find someone who could protect her and any kids she would ever have. Naruto was that sort of person she could be happy with because she knew he wasn't hanging around with her for her body. She would gladly admit she wasn't the most beautiful girl Naruto had ever met, especially when her s weren't that big compared to the other girls in her class, but that was what made her respect for him grow even bigger. Naruto didn't care for good looks but only for a great person, and the fact that she had not once beaten him in a spar only increased her attraction to him. She was also intrigued with his promises. If he said he was gonna do something, he'd do it and not pretend just to impress people, which made him loyal to his friends. Naruto was impressed with Ichigo to say the least. His increase in skill jumped by bounds than what Naruto could ever thought possible. What mostly impressed him was the way he dealt with that Manos, to be able to wound it with a single strike. While only being a Soul Reaper for a short time was astounding. But like everything in the world, all good thing must come to an end. Naruto and Byoku were at Urahara's shop enjoying themselves, talking with Kazuki. Naruto had come to trust Urahara with everything he knew about himself. At first, Kazuki was skeptical about Naruto's story, but it made the most sense, rather than the bizarre theories he came up with as to how Naruto became a Tsurei. Such as, a Hollow and Shinigami fell in love and somehow had. Naruto just shuddered at the thought of it. Naruto suddenly felt two new Ryotsu appear. No doubt they're Shinigami, and they're probably after Rukia. As he got up, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around to see Urahara looking at him, as if telling him he'd deal with this, so Naruto just nodded and sat back down while Urahara and Yoruichi, in cat form, left. Sometime later, Urahara walked in with a seriously injured Ichigo on his shoulder and immediately called for Tessai. Naruto just watched as Tessai came in and grabbed Ichigo and brought him into the next room to heal him. After they had left, Urahara turned towards Naruto and Byoku with a grin on his face. Naruto felt as if someone had stamped all over his grave when he saw that look. Urahara's grins brought nothing but pain and a lot of death threats. "You know about that favor you owe me, Naruto?" Naruto just nodded his head, already knowing where this is going. "Well, I think it's time to collect," said Urahara with his hat shadowing his eyes, making sure Naruto couldn't see the evil gleam in them. Abandoned warehouse. Naruto and Byoku had been walking for 30 minutes down a road, surrounded by abandoned buildings until they came up to the one leaking Ryotsu. When they entered, they saw 8 people across the room, waiting for him. The first one to step forward was a man with jaw-length blonde hair with a straight cut, wearing a black shirt with a blue and white striped tie, and also white jeans. "So, you're the one Urahara was talking about. And it's true you have a strong companion with you. My name is Shinji Hiriko and I guess Urahara already told you why you're here." Naruto just gave a nod in response. "When he first told us about you we were curious. Your power is similar to when we wear our masks, only more permanent. We owed Urahara a couple of favors so he asked us to help train you, seeing as our powers are identical." Naruto just chuckled in response. "I guess a lot of people owe him a favor because you and I are in the same boat." Shinji smiled at Naruto's attitude and ushered him to follow them. When they finally stopped walking, Naruto found himself in a subterranean training ground. Under the warehouse. "Okay Naruto, I'll be your first opponent to see what needs to be worked on. I have to admit though, you are the first of your kind so I'm pretty interested to know what you're capable of. We'll test your companion's powers later on. Please call me Byoku. I may be a dog but don't push me aside as if I'm not here." The other Vizards were gobsmacked. Urahara never mentioned anything about a talking animal, but they finally rationalized that Urahara always did like to surprise people. Byoku came up behind Naruto and put her paw on his back and pushed his soul out. It's one Byoku's abilities from being part mod soul. This was the first time Naruto had unsheathed his katana. He finally got a close look at it. It had a black hilt with an orange diamond pattern with no guard and had a black sheath. The blade itself was 3 foot long with a jagged edge. Similar to Kenpachi's edge of his blade. The sheath was held next to his right hip, being held by a white chain strapped around his waist. "Let's begin, Atami Genkei. Let's begin, Atami Genkei." Naruto's Zanpakuto completely disappeared and were replaced with 4 deadly-looking blades that were completely white in color. One blade was on each arm, attached to the wrist going down to the elbow, similar to Grimjaw's Resurrection blades. The last 2 were in Naruto's hands in the shape of knuckle blades. The blades themselves curved around his hand with one curved edge in the center of his knuckles. Out of the Vizards, Kensai was the most shocked. The knuckle blades were similar to his own in Bankai form. Then a smirk came to his face. He couldn't wait to fight Naruto. Naruto suddenly flew at Shinji with blinding speed and directed his left fist at his face. Shinji only just managed to block it with his Zanpakuto with no seconds to spare. But if that wasn't enough, Naruto was still pushing him back with monstrous strength. "I have never felt anything like this. If I don't take this seriously, I'm gonna be seeing stars." Shinji instantly drew his hollow mask to his face. The other Vizards were greatly surprised as well. For someone to force Shinji into drawing out his hollow mask at the beginning of the fight meant that he was not to be taken lightly, and the strength he displayed was only ever seen by Kensai in hollow form. The two charged at each other again, this time Shinji being able to withstand Naruto's strength. Both fighters put some distance between each other. Shinji pointed his right arm towards Naruto, then began to create an attack Naruto had seen countless times. Sero. Naruto, having no time to think, put both hands forward and met it dead on. The others stood silently, waiting for the explosion to settle down. From the Ryotsu they knew the attack didn't stop him. As the dust settled down, they saw Naruto perfectly fine with only singed clothing. "Why didn't you fire your own Sero, Naruto? This is why we are fighting, to find out your abilities, so we can train you," spoke Shinji with his hollow mask affecting his voice. "Well, I don't know how to, I've never tried before." "What?" Apparently, Urahara didn't tell them a little bit about his background. So Naruto told them how he was originally a hollow that never ate souls, so he never evolved into a high-class hollow that gained the ability to shoot a Sero, but he was pretty sure he could learn how to now, especially if a Vizard could. After that awkward moment, Naruto and Shinji started to trade blow again. Shinji shunpoed behind Naruto and brought down his blade to slash at Naruto's back. To everyone's surprise, the blade didn't even penetrate the skin. Naruto used that shock to catch Shinji off guard and slashed his right arm blade towards him. Shinji barely managed to dodge the attack, with only getting a slight graze on his right arm. "Ah!" Shinji clutched his arm as if it had been broken in half. The other Vizards were bewildered. Why was Shinji screaming over a little graze? Naruto was confused himself until he remembered what his Zanpakuto's name was. Atami Genkei literally means pain limit, so maybe it amplifies the pain you would receive when cut by my Zanpakuto. "Well done, Naruto, you have started to learn my abilities. When a person is cut by me, the pain is increased tenfold and will continue to increase the longer the fight goes on. But I must warn you, Naruto. If you ever fight an opponent with fear in your heart, it will do the same to you when you are hurt." Over the next few days, the Vizards trained Naruto in the key areas where he lacked skill. Kensai trained him in Zanjutsu and Hakuda because their fighting style were similar. Kensai enjoyed training Naruto, though he would never admit it. To fight someone who had a similar sword style as him was very rare, and to find out Naruto didn't talk much compared to the other Vizards was a great relief to him. He found out Naruto needed a lot of work on his style, but like him, Naruto learned faster in a life and death situation, and it gave Kensai a chance to go against Naruto's Shikai, which he was excited about. Shinji began training Naruto how to fire a Sero. At first, his Sero couldn't even blow up a rock the size of himself, but gradually, he became more proficient at creating it. He even trained while the others were asleep until he created a version of his own, Gemello Sero. Twin Zero. It was in its final stages and Naruto was impressed with the results. The technique was to charge 2 Seros at the same time to either fight multiple enemies or to combine them, to create twice as much damage on a strong opponent. I know it might not look much of a technique, but you try and name another person that can do that. And don't name Stark because he can only fire one at a time, just a lot faster than any other hollow. The last technique he learned was Shunpo, from a woman named Lisa Yadamaru. This had been the easiest technique for Naruto to learn. All he needed to do now was to get it to a standard speed for him to match other high-level opponents. Naruto swore he was gonna die from blood loss because every time they sparred to practice shunpo, he always caught glances of her panties. It didn't help either when she offered him to read one of her dirty magazines. He was beginning to wonder if she was a lesbian. The amount of times she would buy magazines only men would buy was beginning to disturb him. Byoku's training with love had been interesting to say the least. The ability she gained from being a mod soul was to be able to heal comrades from long distances, but for that to work, she had to remain completely still. So because of that weakness, she had been given the ability of tough skin, so added with an Arrancar's hierro. Not many people were ever gonna be able to hurt her. Like Naruto, she had to learn how to use a Sero from scratch, but she didn't mind. As long as she gained the power to protect her master, she'd be happy. She also had a transformation that made Love think he was in a horror film. Sorry people, not telling what it is yet. The first one to guess correctly what she looks like will get to decide who to partner Byoku up with. I've already planned out how. After completing training with the Vizards, Naruto and Byoku met everyone at the fireworks festival. Tatsuki was the first to see him and ran right up to him. The last thing anyone expected was for her to hug him and keep thanking him for whatever reason. After Naruto was able to detach himself from her, he could see she was blushing up a storm from having felt his muscles when she rested her head against his chest. "IW wanted to thank you Naruto, if it wasn't for you, I would never have won first place in the national tournament," Tatsuki said, trying to avert his gaze to stop herself from blushing further. She felt a soft yet firm hand gently cup her chin and bring her sight back to Naruto's warm blue eyes. "I guess you can thank me with this Tatsuki-chan." Naruto did something no one dared try with Tatsuki. He kissed her right on the lips. Tatsuki was in shock. She was always worried about Naruto's feelings for her, but now she was just too happy to care who was watching right now and started kissing him back. In the background, Naruto swore he heard a cry of, "That's my boy," sounding a lot like Isshin. The others were like stone statues. This was probably the most feminine thing they had seen Tatsuki do. Ichigo looked to the sky, trying to find the 4 horsemen that would begin the apocalypse. "I will complete my mission to rescue Rukia. I'm not about to die and lose something precious that I've just gained." With that thought, Naruto continued to kiss Tatsuki, both not caring about the firework that were being set off in the background. As he got there, he saw Ichigo, Chad, Orihime, Uryu, Tatsuki, Yoruichi and Urahara standing outside the shop. Everyone turned to look at him. Everyone apart from Yoruichi and Urahara looked shocked to see that Naruto was a part of this too. How had I not been able to sense his Ryotsu from the start, unless he's been able to suppress his powers before he came to our school? But his Ryotsu, it's nothing I've ever sensed before. What is he? Thought Uryu, while hiding his emotions. Naruto looked at the group until his vision landed on Tatsuki, or to be more precise, what she was wearing. She wore a red leather suit that stuck to her curves, while there seemed to be thin layers of black armor wrapped around her ankles up to her knees, her wrists going up to her elbows and stomach going up to her s. There was also 6 spikes protruding outward on each shoulder guards and 7 on her knee guards. There also seemed to be a black belt around her waist, a red helmet on head with 4 yellow spikes above her forehead and a pink visor covering her eyes. I've basically just modified Tatsuki's Raizer suit, but this one doesn't have special abilities, just there for protection. Naruto was slightly jealous. He didn't want other men having the privilege of seeing his girl in such a outfit. But when he thought seriously, he knew Urahara must have given her that suit for a reason. From what he was told by Urahara before he left to train with the Vizards, Chad and Orihime had mid to long range attacks. So they didn't have to get too close to the enemy. And judging by Tatsuki's personality, her abilities must be a close range type. Meaning more trouble for her, seeing as how the Shinigami have longer reach with their swords. That was probably why she had armor protection to defend against their swords. "Why look, you got there Tatsuki, but when did you get your abilities?" Tatsuki blushed at the compliment, while thinking the memories of what happened to her a few days ago. Flashback. Tatsuki had just come out of a taxi, after coming back from the national tournament. She had smile on her face and couldn't wait to tell fair friends that she won first place. She then thought about Naruto. After fighting last opponent she fought against, in the tournament, she wouldn't have won without Naruto's training and planned to thank him in any way she could. As she walked down the street, she saw a small boy with a chain attached to his chest, running as if the devil's hounds were after him. That's when she was it. A creature around 7 foot tall with the shape of a grotesque rhino with a strange mask, charging after the poor boy. She looked around to see that the other people around her couldn't even see it. Eventually, the boy was cornered and an ally with the hollow right behind him, ready to go in for the kill. The hollow suddenly let out a roar of pain as it looked behind to see a sharp wooden pole sticking in its left back leg. Looking further away, the hollow saw the same boy it had been chasing, standing behind a teenage girl. Tatsuki was scared out of her mind as what to do next. She had followed the small boy and hollow, only to find the boy trapped in the alley. She had found the closest thing akin to a weapon by the wall and stabbed it into the hollow. While it was distracted, she signaled the boy to run to her quickly. Now what? I've been training since I was little and this is the best I can do. If I can't even protect this boy, then how do I expect to protect the people I care about? And Naruto. He'd never forgive me if I let all my training go to waste. She closed her eyes, hoping to find the courage within herself to beat this creature. When the hollow didn't see Tatsuki move, it charged head-on, ignoring the fluctuation in the girl's ryotsu until it was about a meter away. As time seemed to slow down, there was great flash of red and yellow light. When the light died down, the small boy looked to see patches of fire where the hollow once stood. The girl who protected him, on the floor unconscious with smoke coming from her gloves. He was sure she wasn't wearing them before but didn't have time to wonder about that as he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned round, he looked to see a hilt of a sword tap him on the forehead and soon, he was gone. Later on, Tatsuki woke up and slowly sat up and started to look around and saw she was lying on a futon in a warehouse. Across the room she saw Orihime, Chad and a black cat talking. What the hell? A talking cat? Said Tatsuki, pointing frantically at the cat. Ah, I see you're awake. We have a lot of explaining to do so I suggest you calm down and listen. Soon, Yoruichi explained about hollows and Shinigami and that Tatsuki had unlocked her powers, same with Orihime and Chad. She then explained that she was training Orihime and Chad to help Ichigo rescue Rukia from being executed. Tatsuki agreed to train with them, to help her friends rescue Rukia. Forgive me for not going into detail here, it's just too boring. Now, I want you to try and use your abilities. How? Said a shocked Tatsuki, still trying to absorb all the information she received. Think back to when you were in the Ally. What did you want the most? Tatsuki thought back when she faced the hollow. How she wanted the courage to fight for the people she cherished. Suddenly, a see-through substance coated both her hand and stated to harden, until you could see white glove, covered in a blue pattern. There were blue lines coming from her fingertips, to the center of her hands, forming a flame pattern with a kanji for blaze in the center. This will change when the ability evolves. When they were about to start training, Chad and Orihime found that they couldn't summon their powers. It was only after they saw Tatsuki panting and deactivated her powers that they could summon theirs. After some trial and error, they found that Tatsuki had the ability to negate someone's ability to use their power. With Orihime, she could negate hers until she ran out of ryotsu, but with Chad, she could only negate his for only an hour. Eventually, she learned to control this power, so all three of them could use theirs at the same time. The glove's abilities were to be coated in fire and explode on impact on multiple enemies that were close together, or just to simply increase damage when hitting someone. She named the ability Atusei Ano, Iron Fist Blaze. It will get better. End flashback. If you're coming with us Naruto, then why did you bring your dog? Said a clearly confused Ichigo. I would appreciate it if you called Byoku please. What the hell? Where are all these talking animals coming from? Said a distressed Ichigo, grabbing his hair, while everyone apart from Naruto, Yoruichi, Byoku and Urahara, jaws dropped to the floor. Alright. Let's take this little party inside the store. There are things we can't about, out here in the open. As everyone was walking in, Naruto was the last to go in while he kept staring at Tatsuki's ass, which stuck to the leather to show its firmness. Tatsuki turned her head to see Naruto staring at her ass and decided to speak. What are you staring at Naruto? She said in an innocent and sweet voice. Just admiring the beautiful craftsmanship God blessed your body with, said Naruto, not even attempting to look away. Tatsuki just sputtered in response while her cheeks matched the color of her suit. Then a devious smirk graced her face and she carried on walking while swaying her hips. Naruto knew what she was doing. It was as if she was saying look but don't touch, but what she was doing made him want to do exactly that. Eventually, they were all underground waiting for Urahara to speak. Alright everyone, listen up. He snapped his fingers and a stone portal emerged, voila. This is the gate that leads to Soul Society. It is called the Senkaimon or Tunnel World Gate. I'm going to tell you all how to pass through it. But first we need to change 3 things. He hit Ichigo with his cane making his spirit leave his body. Then did the same with Naruto. Byoku just left her Gigai by herself. Everyone apart from Urahara and Yoruichi stared at Byoku and Naruto with shock. They never thought they'd see a dog with a hollow mask fragment on their face, but what mostly caught their eye was the appearance of Naruto's own eyes. Naruto, what's wrong with your eyes? Tatsuki didn't know what to think. She looked in his saw he had a red sclera, blue iris and black slitted pupils. If it wasn't for carrying gentleness in them, she would have been quite frightened of them. Naruto just looked down and sighed. He knew he would have to tell them eventually but not just after he showed his feelings for Tatsuki. Okay, I think you better sit down, I guess I should start at the beginning. He told them that there was an orphan and killed at the age of 8. At this Orihime and Tatsuki gasped in terror, while there was a look of shock on the 3 other boys' faces. Next he told them that he became a hollow and didn't eat souls and fought against the other hollows in Hueco Mundo to gain strength instead, for years on end. Then he found and raised Byoku from a pup, until he came to Karakura town and unlocked hid dormant Shinigami powers. Then, he was found by Urahara and brought back to the shop with Byoku. He told that how that, Byoku had eaten a mod soul merged with it, giving her the ability to speak. The rest, they pretty much knew. Naruto made sure to leave out that he was from another world and had a demon sealed inside him at birth. Something just needed to stay buried and forgotten, so you could look to the future. Hey Naruto. You can quit worrying, thinking that we'd abandon you just because you were once a hollow. You're not one of us now and more importantly, you're our friend. If we left you now, then what'd be the point of trying to save Rukia? Naruto looked to see Ichigo facing away from him. He looked around to see the others smiling at him. Naruto just smiled back and nodded. Urahara chuckled. Alright, listen up. He then explained how the gate would convert those without a soul form into spirit energy so they could go into Soul Society while still alive, only leaving behind Ichigo's body and Byoku's and Naruto's Gigai behind. Ichigo was getting impatient. Alright, we understand, let's get going. URKK. Urahara happily jabbed him in the kidneys with his cane. While Ichigo rubbed his side in pain with a worried Orihime watching on, Urahara continued to speak. There's a catch. The window of time that it can be kept open for you is 4 minutes long. Is that enough time? Ordinarily, no. In fact, the entire scheme is a little shaky. 4 minutes with the gate is all I can give you. After that, it will close and anyone who hasn't made it through yet will be trapped in the Dongai, the precipice between this world and the Soul Society. How will we ever make it? Yoruichi was next to speak. Go forward. Remember what I told you about the connection between heart and soul? You must have no doubt, have no fear. Do not think of those you are leaving behind. The will to go forward will be your guide. And don't look back. Only those who can do these things can follow me through the gate and survive. Ichigo stepped forward with determination in his eyes. We all know this already or we wouldn't still be here. Quiet with your preaching and let's do this thing now. Yoruichi stared at him. And you understand that if you lose, you can never return to this life again, right? Then all I need to do is win, huh? Exactly. Naruto smiled and nodded at Tatsuki, showing confidence in each other's eyes. Urahara and Tessai powered the gate. So, everybody ready? As soon as it opens, run in as fast as you can. Right. Urahara smirked. Good luck. There was a flash of light and the group of 8 was gone. They were running through a huge dark tunnel. Naruto was at the front, Yoruichi to his side and everyone the rest were behind them. Uryu shouted out. Don't look now, but that section we just came through is collapsing on us. I'm running as fast as I can but I don't think we're gonna make it through. Yoruichi replied. If you have time to look back, you have time to run. It's all over if the restrictive current swallows you up. They continued to run as fast as they could. Something appeared out of the murk behind Uryu and grabbed him by the extra cloth on his outfit. Ichigo noticed first. Uryu, the idiot. It's that crazy get-up he has on. Hold it. The restrictive current entangles the spiritual body. If you reveal yourself using your Zanpakuto, it'll swallow you too. Uryu struggled against it before Chad grabbed him, tearing away the short cloak-like piece of cloth. Thanks for that, Chad. Chad just grabbed Uryu and hauled him over his shoulder. Let's go. Uryu began to shout and complain about being able to run by himself, but suddenly he saw something. I don't mean to bother you while you're running, but something else is coming, he warned. A light appeared behind them. Ah, Yoruichi, what is that? It's the cleaner. It comes through here every 7 days to clear out the passageway, and it's just our bad luck that today is the day. Don't look back at it, that will only slow you down. Just keep running or it will crush you into powder. A light appeared ahead, getting closer and closer. Go, go, we're almost to the exit, shouted Yoruichi as she began to speed up. The cleaner was getting closer. Uryu shouted, guys, we're not going to make it. Orihime pivoted, activating her power, and started to shout an incantation before a glowing transparent shield appeared before the cleaner. Then in a flash of white, they were all blasted through the exit. The next thing Naruto knew, he was falling and the others were screaming. They landed with 8 thuds. As he sat up, he felt something moving between his legs. Looking down, he saw Tatsuki's head on his crotch. Suddenly an evil grin came to his face. If you wanted to go to the next level of our relationship, Tatsuki-chan, all you had to do was ask. Tatsuki looked up to see Naruto's face and back down to see what her head was resting on, and bolted up onto her feet, faster than any shunpo could ever accomplish. Her face burning bright red, Naruto would sworn that he could have cooked an egg on it, the amount of heat coming from her face. They both turned around to join Ichigo and Chad in stunned disgust as Uryu pulled out a spare cape. Don't tell me he brought a change of clothes, Ichigo deadpanned. Orihime got up and dusted herself off, chipper as ever. Isn't this great? Everyone's okay. Suddenly Yoruichi slammed into Orihime's face, head butting her eye. It was not great, we were lucky, she said disdainfully. My eye. Orihime had animate tears of pain streaming down her face. I told you not to expose your spiritual powers in there. We were fortunate the cleaner only touched the shield area. If it had touched any part of the 6 flowers themselves, you'd all be dead now. I didn't know. Tatsuki began to defend her friend. Hey, give her a break. If it hadn't been for her quick thinking, we wouldn't have made it through that gate in the first place. I don't think any of you appreciate how serious the situation really is. Yoruichi commented. Uryu was the first to notice. Listen, doesn't it seem awfully quiet around here? Quote, yeah, is this place really the Soul Society? Asked Ichigo, looking just as uneasy as Uryu. Yes, replied the black cat. And the specific area we are in is called the Rukon district. It's here in the Rukon district that souls come to live when they first arrive in the Soul Society. As a matter of fact, it's right on the perimeter of the Seirei, where Shinigami live. It's the poorest section, but also the one with the greatest freedom. And it has the largest population of souls within the Soul Society. Uryu glanced around. If that's true, where is everybody? Hey, look at those buildings over there. Ichigo was facing a group of buildings behind a wall that looked clean and new compared to the tenants surrounding them. Why do they look so different from everywhere else? Yoruichi answered the question. Just forget about that. Ichigo's eyes widened in realization. I know. I bet it's part of Seirei whatever mentioned, where all the Soul Reapers live. All right, you Soul Reapers, here I come. He charged forward. Yoruichi's eyes widened at his stupidity. Wait, stop, you idiot. You can't run up to the gate like that, you'll be killed. Ichigo looked over his shoulder in confusion. Everyone looked up, seeing the massive wall in the sky. The wall slammed down, shrouding the shocked Ichigo in a dust cloud. Well, Ichigo looked up as a deep rumbling voice spoke out of the dust cloud. It's been a long time since anyone tried to pass through the spirit gates without a travel permit. The dust cleared, revealing a giant man with armor covering his left arm and the standard Shinigami garb, only covering the right side of his chest. And I don't get many guests these days, so welcome to you, little man. The giant slammed the hilt of his massive axe into the ground. He chuckled, whenever you are ready. Give it all you've got and good luck. The rest of the group stared at him in shock. Uryu spoke first. He's a leviathan. What kind of creature do you suppose he is anyway? He's far too big to be a human being. Yoruichi answered. He is known simply as Jidanbo. He was chosen from amongst the very best warriors the Soul Society has. His job is to guard the Hakuto Gate, one of the four entrants that make out the spirit gates. He's the guard? If we intend to get through this gate, it looks like if we have no choice but to defeat him. Yes, but that will not be an easy task, I'm afraid. In the 300 years that Jidanbo has served at this post, countless invaders have tried but not a single one have ever broken through the Hakuto Gate. Jidanbo has become a legend of power and strength. How in the world are we supposed to defeat something like that? Asked Uryu. That's where your intelligence and creativity come in. The first thing we need to do is have a meeting to decide on a strategy. Ichigo, let's start with WHAA? No, Tatsuki, Chad, Orihime, come back here all of you. Have you lost your minds? The three mentioned were running towards to Ichigo. Jidanbo saw them running forward, so he slammed his axe into the ground, causing several large cracked sections of the pavement to rise up into a makeshift wall. Uryu paled. He's not only huge, he's insane. Jidanbo glared at Orihime, Tatsuki and Chad. You three need some work on your manners. What are you, country bumpkins or something? We are civilized in this city. Here are the rules. Rule number 1. Always wash your hands before you sit down to eat. Rule number 2. Don't eat food that's fallen on the floor. Rule number 3. Battles in the city must be fought one-on-one. Naruto just sweat dropped. The first and third rule made sense to him, but the third rule kinda goes without saying. It didn't need people having to make it into a rule. The kid with the spiky orange hair was the first to approach and challenge me, so he shall be my first opponent. Then I'll come back to deal with you too. This won't take long, I promise. Naruto sighed, waiting for it to be over already. Ichigo told Chad, Tatsuki and Orihime to back off, that he'd handle it. Uryu rushed forward. Ichigo, we can't afford to wait around. Instead of wasting any more time battling the guard individually, we gotta attack together to get past this gate. You're here too, Uryu? Naruto and Orihime chuckled while Uryu looked like he was going to blow. After they stopped talking, Jidanbo swung his axe at Ichigo, who blocked it with his own sword. Naruto smirked. Ichigo's training had really paid off. The big guy was shocked that Ichigo had blocked his attack with one arm only. Jidanbo suddenly started laughing. You're gutsy, I'll give you that spiky head. I can't remember the last time someone was able to stop the thrust of my axe. He then stood up and gave a speech before attacking a second time. Naruto wasn't really paying attention. He knew from their ryotsu and skill that Ichigo would win. Jidanbo then started to shout out random numbers. Wait, I've never had to count this high before. He looked slightly dazed and confused. But I must be at 10 by now, so it's time to finish this. His final strike was sideways cut, destroying the makeshift wall. Ichigo had blocked again. Then Jidanbo pulled another axe, turning red in the face and tensing up his muscles so much that the armor on his left arm broke off. He shouted and brought down both axes in a double strike. Ichigo swung, smashing the axes and sending the gatekeeper flying. Jidanbo sat up from where he landed. Wow, what was that? The giant got up, oblivious to his destroyed axes. He began talking until he noticed his axes were gone. Yoruichi jumped on top of a fragment of the axes. It looks like his axes have been modified somewhat. Jidanbo soon started to cry. Naruto began to feel sympathetic for him. Losing a weapon you had for so long, you start to become attached to such things. Ichigo started to comfort him, when Jidanbo suddenly hugged him in his massive hands, saying how caring he was. Then Jidanbo agreed to open the gate for them. It wasn't until Jidanbo called Ichigo the leader. Uryu started to shout about Ichigo not being the group's leader. Jidanbo then proceeded to lift the gate with pure physical strength. Jidanbo froze once he opened the gate, prompting Ichigo to question if he was alright. Someone appeared in front of them wearing a standard Shinigami uniform with a white cloak. Okay, who the hell's this? Jidanbo muttered that this was the third squad captain, Ichimaru Jin. Said man had a wide, creepy, annoying foxy smile on his face, while Naruto stared at him with wide eyes. Ichimaru Jin? That meant that this guy was one of the three who. The captain chuckled as he drew his blade. Not good. Jidanbo's eyes widened as a gash appeared on his arm, blood erupting forth from it, causing him to fall and stagger to his knees, now holding the gate up with one hand, as it sagged upon him. "Unacceptable," Jin said. "Being a guardian of the gate doesn't mean you're supposed to open the gate. I defended the gate and lost. Once I lost, I had to open the gate, there was nothing else I could do," Jidanbo replied. Jin shook his head, slowly striding forward as he spoke. "No, that's not it at all. A gatekeeper who loses doesn't open the gate, he raised his blade, he dies." Shoot 2. Hado 88. Horayugekizokushintenreiho. A gigantic electricity blast of spiritual energy flew straight at Jin, who yelped and used a quick shunpo to evade the attack. "Got you, Squinty McGrin Grin." Jin went pale as a second spell's name was shouted. Hyoga Siren. A massive wave of ice rushed to Ichimaru, who launched his own spell at the ice that was conjured to consume him. Bakudo 79. Kuyo Shibari. At the Taiko's command, 8 black holes formed in the personal space surrounding the Hyoga Siren, with a 9th black hole manifesting in the center on the icy wave. Jin let out a relieved sigh as his spell won out over the Hyoga Siren, only for him to gasp as a pair of Sero that had been hidden in the Hyoga Siren's shadow screamed towards him. Eyes popping open in shock, Jin cast Danku to form a semi-transparent energy barrier in the form of a rectangular wall as the 2 Seros smashed into the barrier. Once the 2 beams of energy died down, Jin launched his Zanpakuto at Jidanbo, only for Ichigo to leap in the way, bringing Zangetsu up into guard. Jin's Zanpakuto collided with the flat part of the oversized cleaver and slammed Ichigo into Jidanbo, as well as sending the giant gatekeeper out of the gateway and slamming him onto his back. Ichigo struck the pavement on his back with a loud crack and his blade embedding into the ground. Deprived of the means to hold it up, the gate began to lower while Jin set up a barrier on the side of the gate he was on. Yoruichi's eyes widened. "Oh no. The gate. Phew. Whichever one of you guys was doing those attacks was really gunning for me. Bye-bye," Jin called as he crouched down to get one last look at the rescue group. Then, with a loud bang, the entrance was shut. Ichigo got up with a yell of pain and stood up, marching over to Naruto. The Shinigami Daijo grabbed the Tsurei. "What the hell? What was all that about?" Naruto looked back at, "I have some friends who owe that guy a beating. And anyway, someone who attacks an unarmed man like that, when he has no chance of defending himself. People like him make me sick." "Let it go, Ichigo," Yoruichi said, knowing Naruto was talking about the Vizards when Naruto said he had friends who owed Jin a beating, while Byoku was thinking the same thing. "Jin wouldn't have allowed us in anyway. He's one on the 13 captains, same as Rukia's brother who captured her." Ichigo let go of Naruto and instead turned to Orihime. "Orihime, think you can heal Jidanbo?" the orange-haired teen asked. Tatsuki just kept looking at Naruto, wondering what caused him to act so violently. Soon after, the group were invited into the village elder's home for saving Jidanbo. 2 hours later, they were quietly planning another way into the Seireiti until a pig-straddling idiot came flying into the room. Because Naruto was tired, he couldn't be bothered to watch the pathetic fight between Ichigo and the now nicknamed Pig Straddler. "Hey Tatsuki, if anyone asks where I am, tell them I've gone bed." She just nodded in response and kissed him goodnight. The next day Naruto was with Tatsuki, Byoku, Chad, Orihime and Uryu discussing what Kukaku would look like. Uryu and eventually Orihime went to check on Ichigo. The sound of an argument was going on inside until he heard something being scratched, then Ichigo's scream. Sometime later, Naruto stared at the building in front of them. It was really eye-catching. A normal house with 2 huge stone hands on each side of the house, holding up a banner and a massive chimney with the top sealed shut. He ignored the shocked Uryu and Ichigo as he headed towards the house. "Halt, strangers," 2 voices shouted. Naruto looked up, spotting 2 bulky-looking twins standing on the stone hands. "Who dares trespass here? Foreigners from the looks of them, and one of them is a Shinigami." The 2 brothers jumped down. They don't recognize Naruto as being one because of his outfit. Very suspicious. "I, Konganehiko, and I, Shiraganehiko," they now spoke in unison, "cannot allow you passage inside this building. Be gone, or advance now and be killed now for your insolence." Ichigo groaned. "Crap, more gatekeepers. This soul society is just one annoyance after another." Suddenly the brothers spotted the black cat behind Ichigo. "Master Yoruichi." They were quickly led inside by one of the brothers and down a huge flight of steps. 1,000 apologies, Master Yoruichi, for not recognizing right away that it was you. We had no idea that these trespassers were your servants. Yoruichi responded, "It's my fault. I should have sent word ahead that me and my companions were on our way here." "Aha, you are too kind, Master. Such generous words from such a kind person." The guard paused in front of a sliding door. "Ah, Master, we have visitors." There was a knock. "Now, please enter." He kneeled in front of the sliding door. The door opened. Then Yoruichi walked forward. "Well, it's been a long time, hasn't it, Yoruichi?" The others froze from shock. "Kukaku's a woman?" came the shout from behind. "You just assumed it was a man, but never told you that." Yoruichi replied, "Hump, what's this? You seem to have brought a bunch brats along with you." "I shall explain that. First though, I have a favor to ask of you, Kukaku." "That is usually the case when you look me up, Yoruichi." Yoruichi just kept staring at her with a grin on her face. Kukaku had a serious look on her face. "Is it dangerous?" "Probably." A smirk began to show on her face. "It's been a long time since we talked like this." Well, lucky for you, I enjoy danger." Sometime later, after Kukaku blew up her house and told everyone to her. Everyone was about to follow Kukaku to the flower crane cannon, until Byoku spoke up. "Where's Master Naruto? I haven't seen him since the explosion." Everyone stopped for a second. She was right, Naruto wasn't anywhere to be seen. Suddenly, everyone started to hear light snoring. Tatsuki followed the sound to see Naruto under a broken sliding door, with singed clothes, asleep. Tatsuki lifted the door panel off him and knelt down to shake him awake, but it had a different effect. Naruto suddenly pulled her down, put his head on top of her left and his left hand on her right, then started snoring more loudly. Suddenly, everyone else had to exit the building because another explosion went off in the same room. "Geez, Yoruichi, can I have that one as an apprentice? Something tells me we'd get along well." Yoruichi suddenly had visions of explosions all over the Soul Society and then shuddered. Naruto soon found himself outside with the rest of them, looking at the base of the cannon. "This is my one and only enhanced fireworks launchpad," stated Kukaku with pride. "And that's the flower crane cannon," said Ganju, out of nowhere, but his interruption was greeted by a stomp to the back of his head from his sister. "That was my line." Kukaku ignored the pathetic apology attempt from her brother. Left you all speechless, didn't I?" Uryu had his doubts. "I know you're supposed to be a pyrotechnical wizard, but I'm still not fully convinced of it." He paused to readjust his glasses. "The idea of shooting this up into the air is completely URRGH." He was cut off as a large clear ball smashed into his face. Ichigo caught the ball. "What's this?" "It's a Rishu Kaku, or a spirit core. Place your palms on it and concentrate your spirit energy." Ichigo grunted and squeezed the ball for a few seconds before stopping. "Can someone show me how to concentrate my spirit energy?" Any Shinigami should easily be able to do that. So you should know how to do this." She raised her hand and with no effort a ball of glowing energy was floating under her palm. "Well, actually," Yoruichi informed, "he's the Shinigami Daijo I was telling you about earlier, and he can't use spirit energy at all." "Yeah, I can see that." Kukaku was looking at Ichigo, who was still pathetically trying to do it but without success. "This kid is completely hopeless. Ganju, show this amateur how it's done." Naruto began watching Ichigo and Ganju arguing over the ball until Kukaku came over and whacked them over the head. He had to hold in his laughter, unless he wanted the same treatment. Afterwards, Naruto saw a large completely circular dome covering Ganju, who stood inside it. Kukaku tapped her knuckles against the outside of it, then explained to them. "This here is the cannonball." "Cannonball?" said Uryu with a shocked look on his face. "Now place close attention, everyone. You may think the only thing guarding the Seirei is that barrier, but you are dead wrong. It isn't nearly that simple. That barrier is made from a stone known as Seki Seiki. It's rare, even in the Soul Society." Kukaku brought a small ordinary-looking stone and put it on the floor. "This is a fragment of it." She then began to gather Riryoku in her hand and hit the stone with it. There was a perfect hole in the platform, but in the exact center was an unmarked circle upon which rested the Seki Seiki fragment. As you can see, it completely repels spirit energy, therefore it is impossible to smash through the barrier with Riryoku alone. She picked up the stone. Even cut into a small piece such as this, it emits a wave that breaks down Riryoku from all sides. Which means that the Seireitei has this spherical barrier protecting them, not only from the sky above but even from below the ground. So you see, she tapped her knuckles once again on the ball, that's why we use this. Ganju inside looked like he hadn't eaten in weeks. Enough show and tell. He rasped, I'm tired. Kukaku shouted, suck it up. This cannonball is a special hard spiritual partition penetration device I invented. In other words, if all 6 of you combined, put your Riryoku into this Rishukaku, you can create a temporary cannonball that can break through the barrier. Then I'll use the flower crane cannon to shoot that cannonball into the sky and it'll punch a hole straight through the barrier. The group were in a training ground, practicing on creating a cannonball. Orihime's was perfect, Uryu's was a bit narrow but fine, Chad's was unstable but very powerful, Tatsuki's was fine but there was heat coming from it. Naruto's was fine apart from the fact it seemed denser and hardly see-through. But Ichigo's, well, let's not go there. Naruto and Tatsuki had chosen to go out for a walk together and have a chance to speak to each other alone. Neither of them had ever been in a relationship before, and to top it off, both of them could be killed tomorrow, trying to save Rukia. They came up to a lake with the sun reflecting off it, just as it was setting. They decided to put their bare feet into the cool running water while relaxing on the bank, looking up to see the stars begin to appear. Naruto, do you think we can pull this off? I mean, we've only just started going out with each other and I don't want it to end. You're the first person I've ever loved and the Shinigami may try to kill you if they find out what you are. They'll fight you, not because you're an intruder, but to them, it's another hollow to rid the world of. At this point, Tatsuki was on the verge of tears. Naruto hugged her and kissed her on the forehead, as she placed her head on his chest. You have nothing to worry about, we're gonna go into the Seireitei, find Rukia and fight our way back home. All of us together will survive, I promise. At this point, Tatsuki had fallen asleep on his chest and Naruto began stroking her hair. On the way back, Naruto was carrying Tatsuki bridal style until she woke up and chose to walk on her own, with a red radioactive glow on her face. They both had just come in the entrance to the house until suddenly the house rocked. The two of them shared a look, Ichigo, before rushing off. They came upon Kukaku shouting at Ichigo, who was surrounded by a huge ball of spiritual energy. It slowly became smaller until it was the size everyone else had managed. Its edges became wavered for a second before Kukaku shouted out, "You ignorant dumb ass, you gotta stay focused." Ichigo stared at her. Huh? Ichigo blinked. Naruto closed his eyes from the explosion. He watched Ichigo and Ganju get beaten by Kukaku for their mistakes, Ichigo in causing the explosion and Ganju for teaching him how to do it, and threatened them with having no food. Captain's briefing room. The massive doors in front Jin opened and an old voice full of authority called out. So you're here, Taiko of the Squad 3 Ichimaru Jin. Jin stepped into the room. An unexpected summons. Tell me, should I be appalled or impressed and look at this distinguished crowd? He glanced around at the other captains. The captains who control the Soul Society, all here just for me. His head cocked back slightly, or am I mistaken? I see the captain of Squad 13 is conspicuously absent. What's wrong? Did something happen to him? Kanami, the blind dark-skinned Taiko of Squad 9 answered, he's not feeling very well. Oh, not again. I hope he gets well soon. The tall Shinigami Taiko with his hair in spikes topped by bells, known as Zaraki Kenpachi, the Taiko of Division 11 spoke next. Quit joking around. You know that's not the reason you were summoned here. It is my understanding that you went and played with that Ryoka by yourself, didn't you? And I also hear that you failed? Explain yourself. You should have no trouble dealing with 4 or 5 Ryokas without backup. Jin smiled. I cannot, well, except to say that one of the Ryoka surprised me. Yamamoto frowned and nodded for Jin to continue. I was shocked to see one of the Ryoka use high-level Kido without incantation, and most of all, the same person even fired a Sero at me. The other Taiko were shocked. Something that had hollow powers had managed to come to the Soul Society and not be detected by the 12th Division computers. Plus, the same being was able to use Kido as well. Who could Rukia have met in the living world, to gain such help in such a short time? Yamamoto Genryusai spoke once again. This is troubling news indeed, and we'll deal with that soon. But it still doesn't change the fact that you acted alone. That coupled with the fact that you permitted the target to escape. How do you defend your actions, Ichimaru? He asked sternly. Jin shrugged. I cannot. Well, you see, there's nothing to say. I made a simple mistake. I'm not going to stand here and make excuses. I will accept whatever punishment. He was cut off. Just a minute, Ichimaru, said Sosuke Aizen, Taiko of the Division 5. I have something I want to ask you first. Before he could say anything, alarms rang out through the room. Red alert. Red alert. Intruders in the Seirei. All squads get into position. Repeat, red alert. Those Ryoka? It can't be, muttered Zaraki. Jin smiled. So our Ichigo has finally succeeded in forming a cannonball, has he? Said Yoruichi, as she walked over to the now sleeping Ichigo. Ganju watched her. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong with him, he's just sleeping it off. I need the rest of you to go and sit over there. The rest looked unsure but just waited for Yoruichi to continue. We haven't got much time before we begin out mission. I am going to tell you now what we can expect once we're inside the Seirei. You must remember that. Soon, the group were standing in front of the cannonball launch pad waiting for instructions from Yoruichi. Very well, are we all here now? Yes sir. Naruto was about to warn Ichigo when he saw him staring at Yoruichi's tail but was too late. But what happened to your tail, Yoruichi? It looks like one of those flexible toothbrushes. The others gasped in horror while Naruto slapped his forehead at Ichigo's stupidity. Suddenly, Yoruichi began to glow a menacing red aura and spoke with a voice that promised death. What do you mean, is there something wrong with it? She asked with a murderous look. Ichigo suddenly felt small compared to Yoruichi. No, nothing, it's a perfectly wonderful beautiful tail, he squeaked in reply. Uryu leaned in and spoke to Ichigo. Don't you remember, you're the one who actually did that. Huh, I did? After you created that cannonball, you fell asleep and grabbed Mr. Yoruichi's tail. It took 3 of us to get you to let go, but by then it was too late. Yoruichi looked like she was about to cry. My tail, my pride and joy, ruined. Orihime, Chad, Uryu and Tatsuki sweat dropped. I highly recommend avoiding that subject from now on, said Uryu. Yeah, got it. Byoku looked at Yoruichi in sympathy. She would probably burst into tears herself if anything happened to her tail. She slowly began to inch away from Ichigo, not trusting him with her own tail. Kukaku noticed someone else was missing. Hey wait, why isn't Ganju here with the rest of you? Ichigo replied, last time I saw him he was downstairs muttering some nonsense to himself. Never fear, Ganju is here. Rhymed said person slightly panting. You should know, the hero's always the last one to make his entrance. That's only true when your allies are in a grim situation and are gonna die in a few minutes, you dumbass. Thought Naruto in a bored-like fashion. Okay, but what's with that outfit? Said an irritated Ichigo. Ha ha, you like it, hey? This is my custom battle costume, it's pretty sweet, right? Save your breath because I'm not lending it to you, don't even ask. Oh, I'm crushed to hear that, said Ichigo in sarcastic tone, until he realized something. Hey wait, what battle? You're not coming. My big brother was killed by a Shinigami. Ganju said to Ichigo, right into his face. Ganju, don't you dare. Kukaku began to warn him, but Ganju, in a rare show of coldness, glared back at her. Why don't you listen and let me talk for a change, sister? Kukaku's shocked expression could be seen to all, proving this was the first time Ganju actually stood up to her. My brother. He was a brilliant man. He passed the Shinigami Academy entrance exam on his first try. At that time his Ryotsu was at 6th class. That's the same level as a lieutenant of the 13 court guard squads. Then he finished a 6-year curriculum in 1 year. Then he became a member of a squad. In just 5 years he became a lieutenant, but he was betrayed his comrades. His own Soul Reaper allies led him to his grave. I was still just a kid back then, so I don't remember all the details on what happened. But there are 2 things I'll never forget. Faces, those 2 faces. The face cruel Shinigami who dragged my brother's mangled body back home in the face of my dear dying brother, happily giving thanks to that same Shinigami. Why did he do that? Why would my brother be so forgiving? To this day I just don't know, but there's one thing I do know for certain. Somehow my brother never blamed the Shinigami and he never hated them. But how? Ganju shouted all of a sudden. Why didn't he hate the fiends who completely destroyed him? Why did he continue to believe in them to the bitter end? He grabbed Ichigo by his Shiakusho. Somehow, you seem different from the other Shinigami, that's what I think. If I go with you I might discover something important, that's why I've decided, I'm going to help you. I'm willing to go along with you into the heart of enemy territory and learn what being a Shinigami really means. Alright then, are you all ready for the cannonball? Yes, everyone said in unison. Ichigo looked at Yoruichi and then at the spirit core. Hey, I just thought of something. He looked towards at Yoruichi. Do you and Byoku know how to make a cannonball? Actually that's a good question. I guess we ought to give it a try. Uryu looked disbelievingly. Don't tell me this is gonna be your first attempts. Yoruichi dropped from the ledge and walked forward. Put that down on the floor, Ichigo. Ichigo set the spirit core down and stepped back. Yoruichi leapt onto the ball and began to put her Riryoku into it. The ball glowed and soon a perfect sphere surrounded her. They stared in awe and Yoruichi spoke as if it was nothing, just as I suspected. The task was as natural as breathing in and out. Orihime praised Yoruichi and clapped fair hands, but Ichigo was on his hands and knees, surrounded by an aura of depression. I can see it bothers you, but I don't know why you find it so surprising. You'll learn there are many things I can do that are far beyond your reach. Soon, it was Byoku's turn and she walked forward and pressed her snout against the ball. Once again, the ball began to glow and a perfect sphere surrounded her as well. This time Ichigo was lying face down on the ground, looking like he had lost the will to live. In the corner of his eye, Ichigo could have sworn that he saw Yoruichi and Byoku holding up banners saying, "Animals rule." As soon as Ganju and Kukaku were finished talking, Kukaku faced everyone and spoke, "If you're all ready to go, then the final countdown begins now." She smacked her fist against the barrel of the cannon launcher and a large circular entrance appeared. "Get inside, everyone." Once they were inside, Yoruichi looked at every one of them. "Now listen, once we are inside the Seirei, it is important that we stick together. If you should encounter any taikos, do not fight them. Don't even think about it, just run. Our goal is to save Rukia, do you understand? You must avoid taking any unnecessary risks." Everyone could start to hear Kukaku begin the enchantment. Yoruichi shouted, "Now it has begun. Pour your Ryotsu into the core." A cannonball formed around them. 1 minute they were inside the cannon launcher and the next, they were high above Kukaku's house. Ichigo was the first to break the silence. "Somehow I thought blastoff would be more explosive." Ganju grinned at him. "That was only the start, you simpleton." Once the cannonball was at the peak of its height, it shot off in a direction making them all shout in surprise. Ganju then pulled out a long scroll. Ichigo looked at it. "What is that thing?" Ganju turned towards Ichigo. "These are the directions for the next stage of the launch." The first stage of the flower crane cannon number 2 was just the blast-off itself and the initial directional setting. Now we go to the secondary spell, which controls the acceleration and axis adjustment. This will help with the precision guidance. Was Ichigo's smart reply. Ganju turned his head to talk to everyone. "Now there's just one more thing I have to explain to you all. In order to enter the Seirei successfully, we have to stabilize this cannonball. That requires keeping the Ryotsu output from each of us at a constant level, and to do that keep your hand on the crystal in the center so you can see how much energy the others are releasing and simply adjust your energy release accordingly. One mistake and that's it, we'll all die." They all nodded in response. Soon, everyone was arguing, telling Ichigo to lower his output from entering the ball, causing Ganju to repeat the same line twice of his chant. So those two started arguing. Naruto looked like he was going to murder those two if he ever survived this. Not only were they a few hundred feet in the air, their lack of concentration could unbalance the energy in the cannonball and cause it to explode. Naruto thought it was a perfect excuse to murder them. Chad noticed something behind him. "Hey look, what's that?" The argument stopped. They all looked in the same direction as Chad. "It's the Seirei," said Ganju. Uryu shouted, "We're going to crash." Yoruichi replied, "The only way to survive this is to pour in all the Ryotsu you've got." They all complied with the cat's orders and began to do so, then slammed into the invisible barrier around the Seirei. Yellow bolts of lightning danced around them. Ichigo shouted, "Push through, damn it." They all burst through in a flash of light and were in the open air. They continued to float in the air. "What's going on? We blasted through the shield but we're not falling to the ground." We're just floating here, Ichigo asked. Yoruichi ordered them, don't get separated. The cannonball was destroyed by the shield, but its residual energy will still hold us up until it dissolves. Uryu spoke, what happens then? It will coalesce into a whirlpool, then explode and vanish. We must stay together because anyone who gets separated will be blown away by the explosion. Just like Yoruichi said, they all found themselves inside a whirlpool and then got separated into 5 groups. Naruto calmly pointed to the ground, knowing what would do just the trick for breaking their fall. Bakudo 37. Suriboshi. Under Tatsuki, Byoku and Naruto, a star-shaped safety net of energy formed, anchoring itself to the buildings with ropes of spirit particles. The trio landed in the safety net and it stretched like a bungee cord under their sudden weight before lightly sending them back up about an inch as they bounced like they were on a trampoline before they stopped and the 3 got out of the net. Note to self. Thank Hashijin and Tessai for the Kido lessons. He muttered. Hey, Naruto, could you, ga? Tatsuki said as she fell over and tumbled out of the binding spell, landing on Naruto and pinning into the ground. With her on top of him and their faces only inches apart. Seeing this, Byoku grinned as she hopped out of the net. We're definitely getting you some parkour training when we head back to Karakura. Naruto said with a grin. Shut up, baka, Arisawa said playfully, smacking him on the cheek. The two laughed as they got up. So how'd you do that? Tatsuki asked, looking at Naruto's suriboshi as it faded away into nothing. Realizing what she was asking about brought memories of the past few weeks training with the Vizards to Naruto's mind. Being 50% Shinigami, he found he was able to use the same spells as a Shinigami despite how he was originally a hollow. Seeing as Tessai was the former leader of the Kido Corps and Hachi had been his second in command, Naruto had learned quite a few Shinigami spells from both of them. In regards to his Bakudo, he knew Sai, Heinawa, Seiki, Geki, Horin, Sakietan, Kyoko, Shitotsu Sansen, Suriboshi, Enkosen, Rikujakoro, Hyaparankan, Seijo Sabaku, Kuyo Shibari, and Danku. As far as his Hado, his arsenal consisted of Kongobaku, Hyoga Siren, Okasen, Senju Koden Teiho, Kurohatsugi, Hirayugekizokushintenreiho and Byakurai. As the only Tsurei in existence, he'd done a little experimenting to find he could combine the Engri-based powers of a hollow with his Kido. He had to say, the results were explosive, to say the least. The term explosive in this case being it was like trying to put out a oil well fire using liquid nitroglycerin. When he'd asked Urahara why he could mix his hollow and Shinigami powers in ways the Vizards couldn't, the shopkeeper had explained that it had to do with how the Vizards' Shinigami hollow percentage ratio was uneven. Long story short, good teachers. Naruto said. You alright, Byoku? Naruto asked, knowing Tatsuki was fine. He'd been what broke her falling on the ground after all. The canine-like Mod Soul Arankar didn't answer but merely growled as she took up a defensive position near her master and his, as Byoku was starting to subconsciously dub Tatsuki, mate. On high alert instantly, Tatsuki and Naruto leapt to their feet as several Shinigami in black shinobi outfits arrived and surrounded them. That was when Naruto noticed a symbol on the main building of the outdoor barracks, 2 hollow rectangles, one going horizontally the other going vertically that met to form a cross of sorts. Well, ain't this a bitch? Of all the places to land, we ended up smack dab in the heart of the Onmitsukido's training area. Naruto shouted, cursing himself for his lack of observation skills. Baka, how long did he spend in Hueco Mundo? Being aware of your surroundings at all times was a cardinal rule there. Tatsuki asked, unfamiliar with the term. Real cloak and dagger unit, covert black ops. Naruto said, feeling glad that Urahara, Yoruichi and the Vizards had taught him about the Soul Society. They mostly use hand-to-hand fighting skills. Well then what are you worried about? Just leave these guys to me. Tatsuki said. Naruto smiled at her, finally getting to see his girl in action. The suit she was wearing would make it almost like a free show for him, plus the enemy would be too distracted, putting them in a world of pain. Well, unload on them, but don't kill them and leave some of them conscious so we can find out any information on where Rukia is from them. Naruto said, covering Byoku's eyes as Tatsuki grinned. Naruto had sensed that Ichigo and Ganju had run into Shinigami as well, while Chad was avoiding detection. Yoruichi had landed by herself and was searching for the others in her cat form, and Uryu and Orihime hadn't ran into any Shinigami yet. An hour later, all the members of the Onmitsukido were laying on the ground or embedded in the walls, all of them moaning. The ground and walls were littered with scorch marks and small patches of fire burning themselves out. Tatsuki looked around her in sheer disappointment before turning accusingly at Naruto. "You made these Black Ops guys sound tough, I hardly broke a sweat." She's as bad as our Taiko," one of the awake members moaned. "Nah. Our Taiko doesn't use flame-augmented Hakuda. Maybe if we pretend we're dead she'll go away." One member groaned, only for Tatsuki to haul him to his feet. "If you've got enough energy to make wise-crack suggestions like that, it must mean you're in good enough shape to fight." The Onmitsukido member paled and looked ready to burst into tears. "Hold it, Tatsuki. How about he tells us where Kuchiki Rukia is and you let him go? After all, the whole reason we're here is to prevent her execution," Naruto said suddenly, coming to the man's rescue. "Meaning, she'll leave us alone if we tell you?" the Black Ops member asked pleadingly, getting a nod from Tatsuki. "She's in the Senziakusu. It's the giant white tower with a bridge connected to it. It's in the middle of the Seirei. It's northeast of here," the Onmitsukido member shouted, not caring if his Taiko would skin him for singing like a canary. If Soifon Taiko found out how this Ryoka had beaten them into the ground, she might make them fight her again to see how much work the stealth force needed, or worse, make the Pyro Hakuda user her successor so they'd get beaten this bad all the time. Recalling the tower they had seen from the cannonball, the three nodded and Tatsuki dropped the man and headed in the direction he had said. They ran for a few hours until Naruto suddenly skid to a stop, prompting Tatsuki and Byoku to do the same as they noticed he was gripping the hilt of his Zanpakuto. "Come on out, I know you're there." No sooner had Naruto shouted that aloud than a figure leapt off one of the roofs and crashed to the ground in front of them. Looming over the trio was a giant that stood at 9 feet 4. The large individual wore a black shiakusho with a white sash, and a white taiko's haori. Upon the back of the haori was a simple design of a black rhombus that enclosed the kanji for 7. The person also wore gloves with bracers combined with a helmet to conceal their entire body. The behemoth stepped forward, and Naruto was about to do the same. Until he noticed a hand on his chest, he looked towards Tatsuki and saw determination in her eyes. She wanted to prove herself to him, that she had gotten stronger and fighting a taiko would put her to the limit of her abilities. So Naruto just nodded and let her step forward instead. "You three are some of the Ryoka. As a taiko of the Gote 13, I, Komamura Sajin, captain of the 7th squad, cannot allow you go any further. It's my duty to see to the Soul Society's protection, therefore I'll end you three here," the figure said in a clearly male voice. "I don't care who you are. I respect you as person that fights for what he believes in. But whomever tries to stop me from protecting the people I care about, I'll use all my power to reduce them to ashes," Tatsuki said as she took a fighting stance and flames formed crackling to life on her hands, arms, feet and legs. Komamura looked at the human. He had to confess that she did have an attitude the 7th taiko admired. To know she was outclassed and still was going to face him to keep the other two she was with safe was brave indeed. While he wasn't the strongest of the taikos, he was more than powerful enough to deal with 3 Ryoka. "Very well, it would be disrespectful to go about this the easy way of crushing you if that is how you feel. I admire that you're willing to do battle against a taiko with your own power being lower than my own Ryotsu levels, so the respectful thing to do is crush you with my full power." Saying his piece, he drew his Zanpakuto and glowed with a red aura, Bankai. With that, the ground shook as a 100 meters tall giant armored samurai materialized behind him. "This is the representation of my full power, my Bankai, Kokuho Tengen Myoo. He's a big one, I'll give you that. But that won't do you all that much good. Haite," Tatsuki shouted, activating her negation ability. To Komamura's shock, his Kokuho Tengen Myoo vanished as soon as the Ryoka said that last word. What did you do?" he asked. This was a power he'd never seen before. Tatsuki's response was land a roundhouse into his stomach with her flaming limbs. "With how strong you are, my Haite can hold back Samurai Zilla and cut you off from whatever other powers your sword has for about 5 minutes at the most." So you'll forgive me if I skip the small talk and get straight to the action," she said as the taiko blocked a forceful two-handed hammer blow from the armored human. The taiko threw off the girl off him, and looked at his bracers and was surprised to see they were partially melted. Then again, she was using flames with a decent degree of heat to them, not in the league of the flames used by Sutaichu Yamamoto Genryusai's Ryujin Jaka, but still nothing to dismiss either. It best not to try anything that could have those flames come into contact with his skin. Komamura looked back at Tatsuki to see her sending flames from her feet to propel herself forward similar to jets, causing him to raise a brow before she caught him with a blow to the gut, just under his ribcage. Komamura felt the air leave his lungs as he staggered back a step. He glared at the girl as she stood there in a fighting stance while he gasped. So, that's what it was. Tatsuki frowned at the taiko. She figured as much from her first glance at the guy. She knew Komamura was too sturdy a fighter to beat by using raw strength she didn't have yet. So she was making up for it by using her flame-based powers to go for transforming the way she was using her flames to augment her speed to turn it into power to back up what would otherwise be ineffective blows. Looked like she'd be going at this with convert speed to power approach in this whole fight. Lightning quick, the taiko slashed at Tatsuki. The young fighter spun away from the attack, before dashing back at the behemoth. Tatsuki back-flipped over the attack. The moment she landed on her feet, she then shot forward, fist reared back. Her opponent swung his weapon horizontally, and Tatsuki ducked under the swipe. Leaping upwards, Tatsuki's fist shot at where Komamura's jaw would be. The giant jumped backwards, narrowly avoiding the attack. Komamura retaliated with a left hook soon after. Tatsuki surprisingly caught the blow, before turning it aside with ease. Komamura stumbled from the forward momentum, and Tatsuki struck with a flying kick to the taiko's side. Sajin went flying away before rolling to a stop. "You're quick on your feet. However, I can go faster too," Komamura growled, smiling mentally as he remembered she had only used that weird Haite ability on his Zanpakuto, but not to cut him off from his ability to use Shunpo. Suddenly, the taiko was behind Tatsuki, his weapon raised to split open the human's skull. As Komamura swung downward, Tatsuki shot forward but not without getting a deep slash wound, going from her right shoulder to the bottom of the left side of her ribs. She slowly began to stand up and faced the taiko, with a pained look on her face. When Naruto was about to step forward, Tatsuki held up her hand as a sign to stop. Naruto did, but nodded to Byoku, who nodded in return and began to stand still, as if she was a statue. Suddenly, a black aura surrounded Byoku. If anyone could have seen Tatsuki's wound right now, they would have seen glimmers of a black mist surrounding the wound, rapidly repairing it. He dragged his Zanpakuto along the ground in preparation for another swing. The attack came a split second later, and Tatsuki leaned backwards to dodge. The steel barely missed her, and the human Ryoka rolled to the left before jumping up to throw a kick. Komamura blocked with his forearm, but Tatsuki's knee bent, wrapping her leg around her opponent's arm. Tatsuki pulled the limb downward, leaving Komamura wide open for attack. Tatsuki's fist shot forward, but instead of punching, Tatsuki let off a fireball point blank in the taiko's face. Komamura was sent rocketing away, right into a wall behind him as Tatsuki unwrapped her limb from his arm and landed in a crouch before she leapt up into the air and formed blowtorch-like flames under her feet and her palms as she caught her breath and also scanned to find which way was the Senzaiku was. However, her being granted a moment to catch her second wind was not to be. Not a second later, Komamura leapt into the air, right at her. The two met in mid-air, and Komamura initiated with a right hook. Tatsuki spun to her left, dodging the blow. Using the momentum of her spin, Tatsuki lashed out with a vicious kick. Komamura's left hand came up to catch Tatsuki's ankle, stopping the attack. Komamura threw the human, sending her speeding away. The taiko quickly snatched up his weapon, before shooting after her. Komamura caught up with the flying girl before swinging his Zanpakuto at her. Tatsuki countered by releasing a quick explosion-like burst of flame from her entire body that smashed into Komamura's weapon, jolting it backwards. Tatsuki's hands reached up and took hold of the Shinigami's haori before she planted her feet into Komamura's stomach. Tatsuki pulled with her hands, while pushing with her legs. Her actions causing the two to switch positions, Tatsuki now above Komamura in midair. The young fighter flipped in midair, lashing out with a brutal, flame-covered axe kick to Komamura's chest. The Shinigami went falling down to the tiled ground. Grunting as his enemy landed few feet from him, the captain went for a vertical slash at Tatsuki. The girl leaned to her left, dodging the attack easily. Tatsuki's left fist raged forward immediately. Unfortunately, Komamura wrapped his hand around Tatsuki's neck before she could get to him. Tatsuki gritted her teeth as she tried to pull the Shinigami off, but Komamura had already swung the tomboy into the ground, enveloping her whole body in flames, so the Shinigami was forced to release her. She got to her feet and used the jet flame-like dash again to rocket towards him. Tatsuki's fist went flying into Komamura's stomach, knocking the wind out of him before she delivered a brutal knee lift, sending him into a wall. Growling as he got back up, the taiko dashed at the teen. Tatsuki ducked under a right hook with ease. Then, Komamura swung with the flat of his Zanpakuto, directing the attack at Tatsuki's feet. The attack hit, sending the girl spinning. When Tatsuki's head was parallel to the ground, the Shinigami taiko wasn't finished. Quickly grabbing the girl's leg, the masked Shinigami hefted Tatsuki over his head easily. Komamura then slammed Tatsuki full force into the ground. Hard, coughing up blood, as she shook the dazed from her eyes, Tatsuki sent a blast of flame at Komamura's groin. Shocked, the Shinigami used a shunpo to give himself a considerable amount of distance, lest he suffer an injury even Unohana might not be able to heal. Gritting her teeth from pain, Tatsuki opened one eye and pointed her hand at her opponent's head as she called up a technique she developed with her Atusei Ano. Kikuchidori Iso. A fireball formed over Tatsuki's hand and a spear of crackling flames shot out of it, nearly going through Komamura's head. He just barely dodged with a split-second shunpo. He hadn't been expecting such a move. To his dismay, part of his helmet glowed red-hot as liquid heat fell from it. She'd connected with it and nearly got him. Scowling at what he had to do, Komamura reached up and took his helmet off and tossed it aside with a clatter, reviling he was an anthropomorphic canine similar to a wolf or fox. Well, didn't know I was fighting a Kuda Gitsune. Tatsuki teased as she stood up and leaned against the broken wall, one arm wrapped around her side. Komamura's ear twitched. Hoshi did not just call him that. A Kuda Gitsune was a fox the size of a weasel or rat, with vertical eyes and thin hair in Japanese folklore, more of a rodent than anything else. The anthropomorphic canine slashed at her with his Zanpakuto, only for Tatsuki to block, using her Kikuchidori Iso as a sword, but as the two traded blows, it was pathetically obvious that Tatsuki had never used a blade-type weapon before. She was so taking parkour and kendo lessons when she got back home, she swore it. With a roar, Komamura spiked his Ryotsu, knowing the 5 minutes were almost up and hoping to shorten the remaining time by raising his power. Tatsuki winced as the air felt heavy and all of a sudden, the giant samurai was back. That settled it, she was in trouble. Grimacing, Tatsuki stood straight back, proud and at attention, looking Komamura straight in the eye, her face blank and her own eyes hard, void of all fear and doubt. Despite himself, the 7th Squad's taiko felt his respect for the woman rise. She knew how to die. If I may ask, what is your name, Ryoka? Komamura asked, feeling that she deserved better than an unmarked grave. Arisawa Tatsuki, she said coolly, nodding as he raised his sword, Kokuho Tengen Myowo mimicking his movements. Komamura prepared to end her life. But as he had Kokuho Tengen Myowo bring its sword down on Tatsuki, the giant's arm suddenly was sliced off and Asaro blasted the arm with enough force to push it aside so the massive limb wouldn't fall on Tatsuki. Looking over in the direction of the attack, Tatsuki saw Naruto ending his shunpo and sheathed his Zanpakuto while the last bit of light faded from Byoku's mouth after firing that Saro. Tatsuki ran up and hugged them both. Then Naruto checked her over for any injuries and was pleased to see that Byoku's healing had done a great job and probably saved her life. Naruto frowned at her, not at all pleased with the fact she'd done something so stupid as clashing with a Taiko-class Shinigami alone. He was going to give her a piece of his mind once everything was said and done, but for now he was just glad she was alive. Santo, stop. The trio turned to see Komamura. His arm had been removed in the same way his Bankai's had, said limb laying a few feet from him, which set off alarm bells in Naruto's head. Clearly his partner Atami Genkai wasn't the only blade that could go both ways as a positive and negative in a battle. It made Naruto glad he hadn't used his Shikai when he cut off the giant's arm, and Byoku had held back to 1/10 of her power when her Sero hit the severed limb and knocked it away from Tatsuki without destroying it. Naruto nodded towards Byoku again. Once again a black aura surrounded her and a black mist covered Komamura's stump of an arm. It didn't exactly heal it but slowed down the blood flow so he wouldn't bleed to death. You're in no condition to keep going on. See Hana first. With her medical experience, reattaching an arm should be easy for her. Facing the three of us with one arm is suicide, Naruto said sagely. What? How do you know about? Same reason I nearly blew Squinty McGrin's head off at first sight. I know some old friends of the Godate 13. While I'd love to stay and talk, we've got a rescue to handle and I'd rather avoid the other 12 Taiko gang up on us. As a member of the Godate 13, I cannot allow you to go any further, Komamura said as he gripped at where his arm had been. Tatsuki turned to Komamura with a sad smile. Then go get yourself fixed up to make sure you live for the rematch if you feel that it's your duty is to fight me and my friends. We're not leaving until Kuchiki Rukia is no longer going to be executed. She's a friend of ours and the whole reason we're here is so she isn't killed for doing her job. What? Like she said, Komamura, go and get healed first. But here's a little something for you to think about. The Soul Society teaches that it's the duty of any of its members to do whatever is necessary to keep the innocent safe. Yet for taking that lesson to heart, Rukia now waits to die. Preventing her death for doing what was required of her as a Shinigami is why we Ryoka are here in the first place. So I ask you, if the law becomes corrupt and contradictory to where it teaches is seen as a sin, are the truly just, the ones who follow the law or the one who break it? Mull that over as you're healing, Naruto said sagely before he vanished and reappearing a second later to deliver a quick chop to the back of Komamura's head, effectively knocking the Taiko out cold. He caught the Shinigami and placed him carefully on the ground, then shot a Sero into the air at full power to make sure the Shinigami found where he was. With that taken care of, the Tsurei, Mod Soul Arrancar, and human Ryoka all took off running. Naruto, what was that blast you shot? Tatsuki asked as they ran. What, the Sero? The ones who trained me to get used to my powers called it a Sero. It's a technique that hollows can use. The blonde explained. The two stopped when they saw Byoku pulling at a tile and Naruto moved it aside to show a way underground. Please don't be a sewer, Tatsuki moaned. I am not going to trudge through the gunk that a dead guy flushed down the toilet. I don't even want to think about what ghost turd is like. Byoku leapt down there then barked up to the other two. It's okay, there's walkways under here that are as big as that Senkaimon doorway we came here through down here. And there's a modified Kiyomon spell near the edges so no one falls in the sewer water unless they're part of the cleaning crew that gets careless. The dog like Arrancar called up to her master and his mate after a few seconds. Kiyomon creates a glass-like barrier which is difficult to break from the outside, but quite simple to break from the inside. If it's been modified, only the cleaning crew had the risk of actually falling in then. Looking at one another, Naruto and Tatsuki grinned. Good thing we ain't plumbers. Let's get to it. Ladies first, Naruto said. Nodding, Tatsuki leapt down into the sewer, Naruto following as he pulled the manhole tile back into place to cover their tracks. Captain's briefing room. Head Captain Yamamoto stood in front of 10 captains, with Komamura and Jashiro Yukitaki not being able to come. Because they were either injured or sick. The situation has become critical. As a result of recent events, the 13 court guard squads are now of 1 lieutenant and 1 captain. It is obvious we can no longer afford to leave the situation to lower-ranked officers and members. Subsequently, no disciplinary actions will be taken upon Ichimaru for his earlier independent actions. Thank you, sir, grinned Jin. Furthermore, senior officers, including lieutenants, shall be allowed to carry their Zanpakutos at all times with full-time usage of their powers. They're allowed to carry the Zanpakuto at all times? Mumbled Konami. Full release, as in wartime I couldn't be happier, smirked Kenpachi. If someone hadn't allowed the Ryoka to escape in the first place, then none of these measures would be necessary. Spoke Mayuri. Now, what's the use of talking like that, replied Jin. Anyway, he's fair game now. Just the way I want it, chuckled Kenpachi with a grin on his face. With us losing a captain to one of these ryoka, I'll be joining the front lines myself. Everyone, let us declare all-out war on these ryoka, demanded Yamamoto. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.